Alrighty, and we're on. So I'm here at Sydney West today, and I'm here sitting down with Josh Saunders.
Good evening. Oh, yeah, is it afternoon? Yeah, it is.
It is the afternoon now.
It's 1 o'clock. How
So-
are we?
At HPU Coaching.
Yes. Yes, that's the most important part of the entire show. You can stop listening now. I'm joking.
So you've also got your own little podcast as well that you put together.
Yeah.
Mindset Matters.
Yeah. So like we were talking about, it's pretty much just a fun and enjoyable thing to me to be able to spread mindset information and some tactics and things that I've found particularly helpful across 2 professional sporting careers now.
Mm-hmm.
And some things that I start to think about in everyday life and how to achieve things the correct way, really, because a lot of people struggle with achievements. So otherwise, everybody would be driving fucking Lambos, living in mansions, and the world would be a disruptive place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess for people that may not know you, because I don't just have martial arts people listening to this and jiu-jitsu practitioners, but you obviously were at ADCC just last year. And for those that don't know, that's like the Olympics of the submission grappling sport, so to speak. And you've achieved that in quite a remarkable period of time, right? Like a very, you only started jiu-jitsu how long ago now?
July 2020.
Wow.
So whatever that is. We're in the first month, so 29 months.
Yep.
Yeah, if my math is right. 36 would be 3 years. Yeah, 29 months.
And you got to throw in, the spanners from COVID in there as well, right? Like
No, that was after the second lockdown.
after the second lockdown. Okay.
Oh, actually, sorry. It was after the first lockdown that I started.
Yep.
But we may or may not have trained the whole time.
Okay, let's actually wind it back. So I always like to find out a bit more about how people grew up and what life was like, and get a bit of your backstory in terms of before you are this person here today. The podcast is always a good snapshot of where somebody is at this point in their career, and
Yeah, of course.
if we ever catch up again in the future, it'd be interesting to see where you've gone from there. But I guess to fill people in, like where did you grow up?
Western Sydney. I was born in Westmead in 1997, which might shock some of the YouTube viewers because I look 35. I've had an illustrious and weathered past. That's why my head looks like this. Thankfully, you can't see the cauliflowers, but people seem to be really fascinated with them. Like, oh, how'd you get them? How did you, like, what age did you get them in your training age? And I was like, dude, it just kind of happens. I think it's kind of luck of the draw for some people, but yeah, grew up and born in Western Sydney. I've never lived outside of Sydney, or aside from the Central Coast for a brief stint there. But yeah, grew up playing rugby league first and foremost. I started at a very young age. I had a first year at soccer when I was 4, and then I started rugby league the year after at 5. Played all the way up until the NRL in a preseason system, including under 20s for South Sydney. And SG Ball for North Sydney. I was one of 4 people who came across from the North Sydney Bears to the South Sydney team to try and make the under 20 squad, and I was the only person selected. So I was pretty good at rugby league. Towards the end, I didn't really want to be hanging around with those type of people, and it's not that any one individual or anything like that. It was just part of the culture. It was extremely competitive in terms of like you didn't even know where you stood per se, as well from the coaching perspective. At the same time, it's like you didn't really get good quality information for where you were at the current period, and that's something I don't really gel well with because I like to know where I am, where I'm going, what I need to do to get better. So
is that in relation to like selection and things like that?
Yeah, pretty much. I remember asking a couple of the head coaches like, where do you think I am in terms of the pack and getting selected and stuff like that, and they just couldn't give me a straight answer. So I ended up going from first grade preseason all the way down to Ron Massey, which is like 2 divisions below.
Wow.
And it was a big jump, and I was the only person who participated in the preseason that went back to that stage. It was kind of disheartening, really, to be completely honest. And then a couple injuries in the mix, and losing love for the sport day by day. And I ended up retiring when I was 21. Did nothing for 2 and a bit years. Did a little bit of powerlifting. Never competed, just for shits and giggles because I enjoyed lifting weights. I've been lifting weights for 12 years this year. It's always been a big passion of mine. And yeah, then I found jiu-jitsu after training in a mate's garage completely on accident.
Oh, really?
My best mate Zach, he was training with a couple of guys in his garage out in Marsden Park, and they'd done some classes and stuff at some other gyms. And they said, you should come along. And I was like, yeah, cool. We were going to hang out that day anyway. So I rocked up to the garage, passed everybody, put them all in side control.
Really?
And couldn't do anything because I didn't know any submissions. I had no idea what
But
I
you
was
just
doing.
could get on top of them, yeah.
Got on top of them, squeezed the fuck out of them for about 5 minutes.
Mother's milk.
Yeah, exactly right. And they kind of all looked at me after the session, being all beat up and stuff, and they said, "Fuck, man, you're going to be like really good at this. You should try."
Yep.
And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it as soon as the lockdown finishes, and as soon as my license comes back." I lost my license for 52 months, so a bit over 4 years.
Yep.
Just being a fucking retard when I was a kid. But yeah, the day I got my license back was the 24th of July 2020, and the only reason I remember that is because that's when my license expires.
Yep.
But yeah, I literally got my license. My first drive, I went to go buy a pillow at Big W because I needed a new pillow or something. I remember the day very vividly. And interestingly enough, where I got the license, I had to do testing because Corona and stuff was still going on, so all the RMSs were closed.
Yep.
There was an outdoor one in Penrith.
Yep.
Which is kind of like a nice euphemism because I now spend most of my time in Penrith. It's the first day I did jiu-jitsu, and I actually was in Penrith the first day I ever tried it. And now I come to Penrith. It's kind of like a cool story.
Yep.
And went to my first class that night and haven't stopped since.
Yep. So, okay, let's slow it down, all right? Because you gave me a really good sort of synopsis, but
Yeah.
I always like to slow it right down. So, when you, as a kid, so was it your parents that first got you, obviously would, say to you, hey, go and try a sport, or?
I don't actually remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. I've always been extremely competitive.
Were you always a bigger kid? Like,
Not necessarily until I was about 10.
okay.
That's when I started to get a lot bigger.
Yeah.
I was actually a small birth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I was only like 6 pounds or something.
Okay.
Yeah, relative to what I am now, I was really scared, really small. And
Small.
my missus is terrified at the moment because she goes, "Look at you, how the fuck am I going to push out something with your sized head?" Like, it doesn't come out like that.
Yeah, no.
It eventually grows into that.
And they're squishy too.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly
Like
right.
they're-
She's terrified, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always been competitive. I always wanted to compete in something. It was actually a funny part of the story that I glossed over, is that when I played soccer, I got home and I got my medal for the end of the year, or the trophy, or whatever the fuck it was.
Yep.
And I said to Mum, I said, "Hey, when do I get to tackle people?" And she kind of looked at me funny. She goes, "All right, well, we'll get you into it, but you got to wear shoulder pads, you got to wear mouth guard, you got to wear all this sort of stuff." And it was actually really interesting. She was worried about me getting hurt, but it was actually the opposite. I was the one doing the hurting.
Yep.
And it's just one of those things I've always been. I think, to go towards like sort of the context of what I think about in terms of mindset and a little bit of like the esoterics and stuff, I actually sort of believe that things choose you, not the other way around.
Yep.
And soccer was just a representation of something that didn't choose me. Rugby league for a long time was something like that.
Yep.
And now jiu-jitsu is that first and foremost.
Yep. Okay. So as a kid, like, I guess your parents, were they both were they very supportive of you getting really into sport and being really competitive as well, or did they try and ever say,
Yeah.
"Oh, Josh is a little bit violent," like, or?
Nah, I was never a violent kid.
Yep.
I was super fucking shy.
Yeah.
Yeah, extremely shy. I hated talking to people who were older than me. I refused to talk to adults. I don't even really know where it came from. Had like very little friends in school.
Yeah.
Used to get bullied a fucking fair bit until I started learning how to tackle, and then we played bull rush and I just cut people in half. Which probably didn't help like the social awareness sort of stuff, because then people were like scared
of you.
and then
Yeah.
they wouldn't speak to me anyway, even though like I was the shy kid.
Yep.
And it's interesting because you can look at life a couple of ways, and some of them are helpful and some of them are not helpful. But I look back to when I was a kid, and I was like the small shy kid, and it's like, how do you make that not happen as you become the biggest and the strongest and all that sort of thing? You sort of make sure that never happens again. And I don't flaunt that over people whatsoever. I haven't changed into the opposite version of that. But it's interesting of what your life sort of leads into, and the pathways that you choose to take is very much adapted from how you grew up and how you used to see yourself. And
Yep.
usually people go to the opposite end of the spectrum, which I have. It's just like an interesting adjunct to the story.
Yeah. Well, I think, whenever you're young, I always sort of think about it like this, right? When you're born, you've got a family, and if you're raised by your parents or your grandparents or whoever's raising you, you're taking your social cues from them. So what they do, how they treat people, you're sort of watching that, and then you go and put that into practice in terms of how you approach things. And then as you get older, then you look to your peer group, so your friends and your social network from that perspective. And, when you stop, wanting to spend as much time with your parents, you spend all this time with your mates and the people that are around you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only really, when, and if you've got siblings, you spend time with siblings. Have you got siblings?
Yeah, 2. I got twin brother and sister.
Twin brother and sister. Older or younger?
Yeah, 13 months younger.
30 months younger.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so you've got all this time at home with these siblings as well, and so then they're also, you know, part of your friend group, and you sort of riff off each other, and what they pick up, you know, you sort of pick up as well. You know, if you're doing different things in school or whatever, everybody sort of feeds off that. And then it's only really, you know, when you have to spend some time by yourself, whether it's you move out, and now it's like, okay, you got a choice here. You can either go out all the time and just, you know, play up or spend time with your friends, having fun, doing all that, or you have some time alone and you start to realize, oh, I probably need to spend some time thinking to myself, because if I don't enjoy my own company, it's going to be a pretty shit time just being at home, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you first have that moment where it's like this realization that, hey, I don't have anybody else around me at the moment because, you know, I've moved out and, you know, my brother and sister are gone as well, or whatever the case may be, and I'm not hanging out with my friends every day, or I don't want to hang out with my friends every day. You know, you actually have to spend some time with yourself. And for some people, it's quite confronting, you know, like you go, oh, I'm not happy with who I am in life, or I'm not happy with this and I'm not happy with that. And then you've got a choice, you know, how do you approach it now? Do you take that out as, okay, well, I'm just going to avoid it completely and go and hang out with mates and do all this other stuff, or are you going to channel that into something that's positive, right? And I think a lot of the times, you know, people don't really, you're not forced into doing that. It's a choice you have to make unless you have circumstances. So I'll give you my example, right? So for me, my mum and my dad had some friction when I was in, say, year 11. And that strained my relationship with my dad for a very long time. And then my mum had a car accident where she was just driving down Seven Hills Road. And
That's where I live.
Yeah, there you go. So we used to have my dad's office used to just be on Best Road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was where
Just next door to the KFC.
that was where my school is.
There you go.
Hill Sports.
Yeah. So my mum was literally driving just down the Prospect Highway over the bridge, and a teenager had run out onto the road chasing a tennis ball. And boom, hit this teenager. And that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. She was already, you know, having all this stress from a marriage, you know, that was falling apart, so to speak. And then that broke her mentally. And at the time, you know, I'm a kid in year 11, year 12, and I don't really, you know, you don't understand these things about counselling, or, you know, how do you get people help, or how do you recognise, you know, that maybe something isn't right. And so, you know, that led to my mum's mental health declining pretty rapidly over a short period of time. And so, you know, when I went on to university and I started working, I sort of said to my mum, you know, you need to go and take some time away. You know, I sent her overseas to go and spend time with family, and then she wouldn't come back. You know, she got very paranoid and was saying things like, oh, you know, John Howard's out to get me, right? You know, and so as a result of that, like my brother is 7 years older than me, so he wasn't at home. So I was basically at home by myself. You know, I didn't really talk to my dad. And so, you know, I had to spend a lot of time by myself trying to work out these things. And for me, I channeled it into positive things. Like I just hooked into work. You know, I was working, I did a mechanical apprenticeship, and I was studying at uni and then training as well. And so I just did that for, you know, all those years. And it sort of helped me to get myself into a better position from a career perspective. But, you know, I still had to come back and work on all this sort of trauma, so to speak, that I just sort of brushed aside, right? And so I think, you know, and the reason why I bring that up is because, you know, you're very big in terms of talking about mindset, you know, and how you focus on actualizing, you know, the things that you want to actualize, right? So I guess from that perspective, I'm just trying to understand, you know, obviously being, if you mentioned you were bullied when you were younger, you know, and then you haven't become completely the opposite now that you're the bigger guy, but you've had to sort of work on that on the way through, right? So I guess, you know, in primary school, like what would they bully you about, I guess?
Just the usual typical kid stuff, stupid shit like, you know, hair or just dumb things that don't even make sense. You look back on it now and you're like, oh, kids are just fucking assholes.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it was always just like an alienation thing.
Yeah. Isolate someone, pick on someone.
I was a bit of a weird kid, to be honest. I fucking love Star Wars, and I would rather fucking play with that than talk to people or do whatever else. And yeah, it was just, I don't know. This sort of goes along the path of the same line of thinking of what I was speaking about earlier, is that I don't think you choose things. I think things choose you. And I think a certain amount of oppression or a certain amount of, I don't like using the word trauma, to be completely honest.
Yep.
I have a personal belief that neither the past nor the future exists. So you're being held by your own imagination.
Yeah.
And it's your imagination that's feeding into that is actually actualizing it into your reality. So if you basically stop thinking about it, you won't be thinking about it anymore. I know it sounds like a bit of a sounds like a bit of like a macho thing to say, is like, oh, well, if you don't think about it, it doesn't exist. But if you actually do sit with yourself and try and do that and accumulate some understanding that it's only a product of your mind that continues that. Like, people take a photo and they say, oh, this is a record of the past. No, it's not. It's a record of the fucking present moment that is now continued forwards. Like, the only time is present now. And everybody says, oh, it's like a woo-woo, esoteric, fucking hairy-fairy thing. Well, when you really think about it, it's true.
Yep.
There is no future, and there is no... What future have you selected at the moment, and when have you ever predicted it correctly? So technically, it doesn't exist unless it's in your mind.
Yep.
And then you can take that one of two ways. You can either create the future that you don't want to have, or you can create the future that you do want to have. But it's all based on your personal perception of how it comes to fruition anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't see why that is any different from the past.
Yep.
If you have a record of the past, and even if you read into psychology and understand rote learning and memory and all those sorts of things, our recollection of the past isn't even fucking good. Like 9 times out of 10, it's the video that you've watched of the event that
is sparking
that is now replacing the memory of what you, like when I won trials last year. I know exactly what it felt like. I know exactly what it looked like, but I now associate that more with the videos that I've watched of people who've sent me videos rather than the actual event itself.
Yep.
And it's just a perfect example that the majority of people don't actually have the correct memory on the situation. Anyway, you see it all the time in police investigations where they put the pressure on people in interviews and stuff like that, and
they crack.
Well, they get them to have guilty
They
confessions that they otherwise nothing happened.
Yep.
They can put the squeeze on people, and they can basically mold reality to whatever they want. So I don't really see that the past or the future is any different, to be completely honest.
Well, if you think about it, in terms of past, present, and future, right? When people think of the future, all that does is really induce anxiety and worry. People are generally, you don't really think about the future unless you're spending a lot of time. Like what keeps people up at night is not a happy memory or a happy thought of the future. It's normally something bad. You're anxious about something, you're worried, you got anxiety about something, right? And then usually when you're thinking about the past, it's because they're beating themselves up over something that they regret. They go, oh, I wish I could change this, I wish I could change that. So, I think there's a place to have those things. Like, I think, you do need to have some time for reflection so that you can move forward. But once you've closed that box, it's like you got to really just push that box aside so that you can focus on the present.
Yeah, my thing is how much of your creative energy in your own mind and thinking about different things that otherwise have happened or are about to happen, whether in the past or the future, like we discussed, doesn't exist, is going into things that you do not want or going things that are hindering you or hindering your life. How many people are constantly hemorrhaged by their ability to recollect the past of things that have happened to them negatively? Because really, when you think about it, it's probably equal the amount of bad things that have happened about the amount of good things that have happened. So why are you only focusing on the negative things and putting yourself into a deeper hole every single day? Or people even start to describe themselves, oh, I am this way because. Well, not really, because you could wake up any day and change exactly who you are based on what you continue to do with your life. A lot of people say that I am fat because of this, or I am lazy because of this, or I am poor because of this, or anything like that. And it's one of those things that you are perpetuating the idea in your head by using that language. And then that language is then creating actions. Those actions are creating habits. Those habits are creating a character. And now you are playing that character. The real secret is that you're doing it correctly. There's no other way to do that, but you're only doing it for the negative influences on your life rather than the positive influences. So you already know the blueprint. You already understand it very, very well. Like, people have arguments with themselves, with other people in their head by themselves, and they perpetuate the idea that, like, I came into this conversation today, no expectations. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad or whatever, but you get to create that based on the expectation that you don't have. You can actually be here and have this conversation and make it what it is, rather than saying, you know what, Johnny's going to probably hate some points that I'm going to bring up, and we're going to argue about this, and we're going to have differing opinions on that. And now I'm projecting that energetic onto the conversation, having already decided what it was going to be like.
They call that the see, do, get paradigm. And I know you've talked about this. Well, you didn't use that particular vernacular, but you do talk about this. But
or be, do, have, or
So what you see determines what you do, and what you do determines what you get. So if you have this preconception that this is what's going to happen, you approach it already in a negative frame of mind, and as a result of that, what you get as a result of that is negativity. So you know, going in with limiting your expectations, generally you then just in the moment you get to enjoy what's going on, and you don't approach it with any preconceptions about, oh, we're going to talk about this or we're going to talk about that.
Exactly.
You know, I think, you know, you raise some really, really strong points there in terms of mindset. I think the other one that I sort of really, really enjoy is that we're sort of conditioned from a young age to view things in the context of good and bad, right? And so it starts, you know, like, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, because at the end of the day, when you come to this realization that it's not about good and bad, it's actually just actions and consequences, right? You take away, so, you know, I'll use the example of, you know, okay, I was speeding. Okay, is that good or bad, right? Well, it depends. Did you get caught or not? Right? If you got caught, well, okay, that's bad. If you didn't get caught, well, maybe that's good. You got to your destination faster, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you think about it from that perspective, you know, almost everything in your life, the first thing you think of is it good or is it bad? You know, I got a pay rise. Oh, that's good. Oh, I got fired. Oh, that's bad. Right? So straight away we go straight into this mindset of is something good or bad? But you can't change the outcome. And I know you'll love this because you always talk about, you know, are you focusing on the outputs? Are you focusing on the inputs? Right? And when you view things from that perspective of something being good or bad, you've already focused on the outcome.
Yep.
And you haven't focused on what can you physically do about it? What can you actually change? And the only way you can change it is by thinking about action and consequence.
Yep.
Right? If I do this action, is it likely that I'm going to get better at this topic or this subject or this, you know, particular task or not? Right? Because there's only two choices in life. You either do something or you don't, right? And the time that you say, okay, and this is how I approach it, like anytime I feel like I'm going to go, I'm going to think about it a little bit more, well, then just take that as a hard no, because then if you really actually want to do it,
you would have already done it.
You would have already done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll blow your mind a little bit, this one. There's some ancient wisdom and laws that basically govern the universe and how it all works, and it's called Hermeticism. It was actually by a guy called Hermes Trismegistus, and it's the Greek mythology and the Egypt mythology of Hermes, the god of. I don't actually know what he is the god of, but Hermes is the name that they give to him, and he actually created these 7 laws of the way that the universe works. And there's things like as above, so below, as within, so without. And his thing is the law of polarity, is that there actually is. It's kind of like a snake eating itself, right? Good and bad are the same thing. Yin and yang are the same thing. There is yin within yang and yang within yin.
Yep.
And they are not eating each other, but they are in like a union of dance, right? So really, in actuality, there is no good or bad. It's on a continuum, but it's a circle. So it's like to say, point to me on the thermometer where it says hot. We can both agree that 40 degrees Celsius in temperature would be quite a hot day, but if you're talking about boiling water, that's not even fucking close. So is it hot or not? Well, it depends. It's in relation to that concept, right? Point to me on the thermometer where it's cold. Both of those two things are temperatures. Temperature is the spectrum, and then you can start to decide where on that spectrum it exists as a continuum. And it's the same thing I talked about clients about. Success and failure is completely deterministic on the way that you view it. It's on a continuum. It's not I have failed over here, binary, and I have success over here. It's to which degree have I failed? To which degree have I succeeded? If you lose a jiu-jitsu match, you haven't failed. In my opinion, you fail if you give up.
Yep.
That's about it. So everything on the continuum is nearing you towards success as long as you keep going.
Yep.
You only fail when you quit.
Yep.
So really, if you take that methodology into every area of your life, it's like, well, if I give up, I fail. Everything else above that is fantastic. So now you can live in this paradigm where you're not constantly measuring yourself by the shortcomings of your failures, because you never actually have failed. You just continue to do it. And this goes back to what I say on my show, is that you need to set up your life in a way that you act in accordance with, if you set up the idea that you act within that, what would make it unreasonable for me to not get my goal? If you just continue to train every single day to high quality, eventually you're going to be very fucking good.
Yep.
In anything, in any skill, whether it's fucking basket weaving, whether it's jiu-jitsu, it doesn't matter. If you continue to do it at a high level over a long enough period of time, it would be unreasonable for you not to get what you want.
Yep.
And the only mechanism that you can then measure that progress is time. And we can go deeper into that as I've started to go into my show, but time is the only measurement for what we have to make happen. And like what you were saying, you either do or you do not. There's actions that will gear you towards where you want to go, and actions that will gear you further away to where you want to go. But really, that's only a representation of how much time do you want it to take. And that perfectly suits my story, where I get a brown belt in 19 months, in less than 23 months, sorry. I won trials at 19 months, I got a brown belt at 23 months, or whatever it was, I don't remember. It's been a illustrious career. But anyway, that's where people are going, oh, why the fuck has that happened, or how has that happened? Because for people who are listening that don't do jiu-jitsu, it usually takes about 8 years for most people, and it's a quarter of the time.
Yep.
So they're like, oh, how is that even possible? Well,
Yep.
it's like, how much time are you willing to put in?
Yeah.
How much effort are you willing to put in? How much mindset are you willing to put in to manipulate those metrics in your favor to where time is a smaller constraint than it is a larger constraint?
Yeah.
Because I could train once a week.
It just take you. Yeah.
It's just going to take me 20 years.
Yeah.
Which
that's
is fine. But if I train 13 times a week,
yeah, it's
we're
different.
now playing in a different ballgame.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue talking about the sort of chronological development of you, right? Because you mentioned, you started to get a bit bigger at the age of 10, right? So did that then change how people perceived you and saw you, in school, or how you carried yourself as well?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say both of those things. I actually moved schools in year 4 when I think I was 10.
Yep.
Yeah, so I moved schools. Became a lot more popular at the second school, and I think that was due to a number of factors. It's like I'm the new kid, the new toy to play with, that sort of thing. And I already had kids who I'd played footy with that went to that school, so there was a bit of social proof there and stuff like that. So I had a little bit more to fit in with those people. And I'd definitely say I still experience some of the same things. But now understanding mindset from a perspective that actually legitimately works, it was my projection onto the situation more than it was the actualities. And I was actually attracting those sorts of characters and those sorts of people, where if I went into that school environment and said to myself, oh, this is going to be great, I'm going to meet a bunch of new people, everything's going to go swimmingly, then I would have been in that energetics and representing that through the way that I interacted with people. But there was always that inkling of doubt. Obviously, as a 10-year-old, you don't have the articulation inside your own head yet to discern and delineate that information out, where I was, all right, it's a new school, but most of the other stuff might still happen. And if you put a but on it or an if, like, if you're listening to this, remove if from your vocabulary. Don't fucking use it. Don't use it at all. Like, oh, I'll be really good if I do that. No, just say I'm really good.
Yeah.
I don't think most people understand that. And then people ask me, like, how did you get so good? I was like, I never had a fucking doubt that I was going to be good.
Yeah.
Never. Not once. And I was very beneficial to go through a couple of situations where my mates, when I first started jiu-jitsu, said, you're going to be really fucking good.
Yep.
Then my coach said to me, my first coach, he said, man, you're going to be really fucking good. So I had these receipts basically of people telling me those things. And even when I first started training here at Sydney West, Luke said to me, he goes, if you train here for 12 months, you'll win trials. And I did.
Yep.
And it was just this confluence and the confidence, and kept building because I was getting external praise for the things that I was doing internally.
Yep.
And now I recognize it in a different stage where it's actually me who was projecting myself onto that situation and gaining the attention from those people to basically give you the idea. So you don't get confirmation from the outside that changes your behavior. You change your behavior and then you get confirmation. Then you get it. It's always the suffix, not the prefix.
Yeah.
Because you get all these things where people who are heavily overweight and they get a diabetes diagnosis and they still don't change their behavior.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not the way it works. You have to change your internal world first, and then your outer world will reflect what you have changed inside.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to go back through that story a couple times now, being interviewed on so many podcasts. And you can start to see it through that lens.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, cool. I was actually the driver of that bus much more than I thought I was.
Yeah.
And that gives you ultimate power because now you have the keys to the kingdom. You can do whatever you want.
To anything.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because I think, a lot of times, people might have this extreme skill at something and then you go and say, oh, can you do this? And then they're like, oh, I'm not good at that. Right? But the reality is that you could be good at that. It's just you choose not to be.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like, and sometimes it's priorities, right? So if you don't have the time or like in my instance, I've got family, so, I have to prioritize my family unless I just want to be a deadbeat dad, which is, you could do that too.
Yeah.
But for me, family is a high priority. So then it's like, okay, because that's a high priority, I move some of these other things around so that I want to be a good dad. So this is what I think a good dad should be or, blah, blah, blah. And I gear my actions towards that. But, sometimes it's like, why you see people who might have some really, fucked up circumstances do some really great things is because there's no other choice. The choice is either, okay, so as an example, when like a lot of the times I would get a very similar thing to you when I was working in the automotive industry, a lot of praise. I'd start a job and the first job I worked in the automotive industry, like I was already on the back foot for a little bit of bullying because the owner had gone and said, oh, Johnny's a whiz kid, he's going to be this, that and whatever. And, for some of the older guys in the business, like they obviously didn't like that, and that becomes it makes you a target for for some behavior.
Some
and
hazing.
Yeah, right. And so you got to make a choice in terms of how do you respond to it. And I was always just, okay, I'm just going to put my head down, keep working. And, as an example, a mechanical apprenticeship is supposed to take, 4 years. I was done in 3. But I finished, TAFE's course meant to be 3 years. I finished it in 2. My uni degrees, that was meant to be 5.5 years. I finished in 4.5 years. And, people would say, oh, you can't do that. And it's like, well, yeah, you can. You just enroll. Like,
you can't do that with your current mindset.
Yeah.
I am not subject to your limitations.
Yeah. And so, like, for me, like, what was driving me back then was because I didn't want to be a burden on my family. Like, it's just so for me, there was no choice. Whereas if it was like, maybe if my family circumstances were better, then I'd be like, oh, yeah, I can just cruise it. But for me, it's like, okay, I need to be able to make income. So that's why I went and did an apprenticeship. And even the boss of that dealership, he said to me, why do you want to be an apprentice? You're studying law and engineering. You could just finish your degree and then go work a corporate job. I was like, yeah, but this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that I remember a motivational type speaker, inspirational speaker. He was like giving us this talk when I was working at Toyota, and he was like, there's generally only 2 motivators in life. It's either pain or pleasure. You choose to do something because it feels good, or you choose to avoid something because it hurts, right? And it sometimes, you might need to have extreme pain. You might need to get that diabetes diagnosis, that cancer diagnosis before you realize, hey, the way I've been living has been a little bit shit.
Yep.
And conducive to developing these conditions. Sometimes, these things might develop without anything, with none of your actions, and it's just the hand that you dealt.
Yeah, sometimes even there's a theory that I've come across recently is that all time and all universes and all fractions of parallel universes are happening all right now at once. And typically, if you feel the urge to pursue something, it's a future version of you that says, hey, dickhead, like this is the way to go. And I've had that happen many, many times in my life, which have guided a lot of my decision makings. And it's interesting to have the belief of consciousness is that we are receivers of it. We are not creators of it. We're like we're not even generators. We're recipients of it. Exactly right. So I think being clued into that sort of way of thinking gives you the idea that, you put yourself in the situation where you had to do it.
Yep.
There was no other option. And I look at my life like that a lot as well. Like I don't really have the choice in becoming a world champion because it has already been done.
Yep.
I have to abide by that, and I've already been chosen to do that. And even if this sounds fucking retarded,
people go,
I don't care. I don't give a fuck because placebo is accounted for in every single clinical trial study of any medicine that's ever been invented.
Yep.
And it's one of the most powerful things. It's like self-hypnosis. Like every word that comes out of your mouth is self-hypnosis. I don't say things like I can't. I don't say if. I don't say but. I don't use these words. I was talking to a client the other day, and he goes, why are you on all the time? I said, because I fucking tell myself that I'm going to be on all the time. Whatever the task dictates, I'm going to fucking do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to do it the way that I see that it should be done, to a high quality and a high standard.
Yep.
I don't come into training every day and fuck around.
Yeah.
I come into training every day hoisting fucking ADCC gold.
Yep.
And yeah, the first time it was trials gold. The second time in trials in November is going to be trials gold as well. And then eventually it's going to be the real fucking deal.
Yep.
And it's like the amount of energy and attention and effort that you can place in your head to that, the more that you can attract it. Because if you see yourself as having already done it, you're going to act in accordance with that vision.
Yep.
And then you're going to build a habit in accordance with that vision. And then you're going to become the character that develops into that person already, and you've already become them. You just have to wait for time to catch up. That's how I see everything. I said it on my trials run. I said it to one of your good mates, Sonny Brown, the day of the show. I'd forgotten my passport. I'm like, oh my God, what a drama. Couldn't care less. It was in Blacktown. I live in Seven Hills, whatever. So I drove home, got back, came in, and Sonny said to me, he goes, man, how are you feeling today? And I said, couldn't be better. I've already won. I've just got to wait for time to catch up.
Yep.
And anybody listening will probably think, what an arrogant fucking piece of shit. But I did win.
Yep.
And I'd already seen it a number of times in my head. I'd already seen the vision of what it would be like to win and what it was going to feel like and what clothes I was going to wear and how it was going to happen and all those sorts of things. I now realize from a more educated perspective that it's not up to us the how. It actually doesn't matter how it happens. It just matters that it does. So I was trying to like prepare a little bit on how and that, to be completely honest, wasn't the point of focus anyway. It was just literally falling to my knees when I did get announced the winner, whether it was a submission or anything like that, it didn't really matter. And then running over to go and hug Luke. That was it. That was the memory that kept playing in my head. And the reason I say it was a memory is because I projected it into being a memory.
Yeah.
And I'm fucking confident that this is exactly the way that it works, because I saw it, I tasted it, I touched it, I felt it. It was so viscerally real, as if I had already done it, as if it was a memory already implanted. And there's some theory to say that if you already feel like it is a memory, then you have no choice but to commit the acts to get there, to make it a fruition. And it's crazy. Like high-level business people talk about this all the time, people who invent crazy companies and sports stars and all that sort of thing. And they always think about greatness well before it actually happens. And they talk about, I fucking visualized this, I made it happen, I brought this into reality. And I think absolutely it's fucking true. Like if you want to achieve something that is difficult to do, you've got to see it first. You've got to feel it first. You've got to think, what is this going to be like when I achieve it? How am I going to feel when I achieve this? If you feel like that all the time, it's only a matter of time until you bring it into your fucking reality. If you feel excellent all the time, you're going to act as if you feel excellent all the time. You're going to perpetuate actions that make you feel excellent. So it's like kind of like the chicken and the egg. Except the egg definitely comes first, because you're producing that feeling and then following up those feelings with those actions, which then again is like the snake eating itself. It's just this infinite cycle of you perpetuating those sorts of things. And it happens for negative inflections. You go, oh, I'm feeling sad today, or I feel tired today. And then you act tired. There's no fucking secret about it. There's absolutely no secret.
And sometimes you are legitimately sick, but like, you projecting that actually makes you feel worse as well.
Exactly right. Or people that govern their feelings based on the fucking weather. It's a rainy day. Oh, it's going to be a bad day today. Who the fuck are you to decide that? That's right. Who are you to decide that? And then you probably go through traffic and you get a little bit more pissed off, or your coffee's not just the way that you like it, or your lunch is a little bit late, your fucking bus is a little bit late, and you're like, oh, I knew it. I predicted it. Guess what? You fucking did.
Yeah, that's right. Like you're bringing this idea into your life.
100%. And you literally can sit back and say, fuck, I said it was going to be a bad day, and it was a bad day. You have the blueprint. What if you flip that on its head and said, it's going to be a fucking phenomenal day no matter what I do? Because if you carry that energy and intention into that day, like I always say this when I walk on the mats, every morning and every night, this has been the most productive session that I could have had today, and it's going to reach me further towards my goal. I say it in my head every time I walk on the mats. The most productive session I could have had today, and it's going to reach me further towards my goal. If I preface the session with that, how the fuck am I going to have a bad session? How am I going to have a session?
You already put yourself in the right frame of mind
exactly
to attract the session. That actually ties back in, when we're talking about past, present, and future. I'll give you a different anecdote here, but because I was in the automotive industry, like sales guys, right? So you think about selling, sometimes, you deal with shit people, right? And I'm not saying that that's every customer. There are great customers out there, lovely people to deal with. But then, people always have this idea that the customer is never wrong. Right? And so as a result of that, you deal with some people and they're just absolute shit. Right?
They're dickheads.
Because they treat you like shit because they feel like, well, there's nothing that I can do that's wrong because I'm the customer and I'm always right. Well, it's like, no, you can have some decent manners, first of all, and you can have some decency to treat somebody else like a human being. Just because somebody's a salesperson, they're not worse than you, right? Yes, they are trying to sell you something, but they can only sell you something if you choose to buy it, right? So, a lot of the times there might be some negative interactions that happen with a particular customer, and a salesperson, they're just, you can see it like, their whole day's a write-off.
Ruins their day.
It ruins their day because they've let one customer interaction impact every other interaction that they're going to have that day. And so one of the things that I was always very big on is if somebody has a bad interaction, look, go for a walk. Go clear your head, right? Because before you go and speak to that next customer, you got to remember that although you might have dealt with 10 customers today, to that next customer, you might be the first salesperson that they've dealt with, right? And so if they come in and you're already in this shit frame of mind, you're going to have a shit interaction. They're going to probably, give you a shit review. They're going to give the business a bad review.
Down to your tone of voice.
Yeah. Down to even like, you pick up the phone and you're not smiling when you pick up the phone. It's like, yeah, what do you want? Versus, hello, how may I help you? Like it's something so small that can really influence the tone of the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And then, at the end of the day, you go, I didn't sell anything. Well, your mindset wasn't there the whole day. How do you expect to sell something? You're sooking for half the day. You didn't really do anything. You didn't make any phone calls. I'm just having a bad day. Today's a write-off. Right? You've already written your day off.
Yeah.
And you get to the end of the day and you got what you got. Right? The other thing I wanted to sort of pick up on was you were talking about this idea of parallel universes. And I love this idea, right? Because if you think about the idea of infinity, right? Infinity is so large that there would be another Josh Saunders and Johnny App having this exact same conversation. In another universe, there'd be a version where it's our roles are reversed or whatever the case may be. There'd be a version of us being female or whatever else.
Yeah.
Right?
I like to believe that they're the worst version. I'm the best version.
There can only be one.
There's only one best, and it's this one.
Well, and I actually use this sometimes because I'll admit this. Sometimes I have some really fucked up thoughts, right? Like when I say fucked up thoughts, they might be like ultra violent. They might be ultra negative or ultra bad, and I go, you know what? There is some version of me out there that is in that frame of mind that is probably going to do the wrong thing here.
That acts on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's not this version here.
Yeah.
Right. And so I always use that as a bit of going back into how you would have visualized the future in that sense, and you're just waiting for time to catch up. When I go through and visualize, like I did the same thing for my mixed martial arts fight. I'd already pictured, all the different ways that I could win. I pictured, what were the potential ways that I could lose and wrote them all off, right? I'd already pictured, my walkout and exactly how it was going to go and everything. And it just all lined up.
Yeah.
The only thing that didn't line up was that the guy was just a little bit taller than I expected. So what I expected to land didn't land, but then I just had to change the game plan.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so then I got the result that was meant to be. And at the time, I wasn't really focused on winning or losing. All I wanted to focus on was I wanted to have fun and I wanted to have a good show.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And the outcome is already there. The outcome's going to be whatever the outcome is.
It's interesting you say that because I actually made a video of the interview that we did before the Harry fight, and you're like, well, you reckon you're going to wrestle for a bit? And I said, yeah, I'm going to take him down.
Yep.
In the first minute, it happened.
Yep.
Like there's a certain amount of conviction in the words that you use, and that's why I say you have to be very careful with the words that you use. If you're saying, oh, I'm weak or I'm injury prone or anything like that, you're projecting that into the situation, whereas I don't even think about injuries.
Yep.
And I think about losses, I think about losing, and I think about potential ways to lose the exact same way that you're talking about. But I'm only recognizing the fact that they are a possibility rather than just honing in on them and focusing on them. I focus on all the things that I can control rather than the things that I can't control.
Yep.
And losses are a dime a dozen. They're going to be happening whether you like it or not. It's just the way that the cookie crumbles. If you would dwell on those things, you're feeding it more energy, so it's probably going to happen more often. Same thing as like if you're thinking about you're going to get injured. I actually experienced this. I broke my right ankle on the 13th of August 2015, and I did my left foot on the 14th of August 2016, exactly 366 days later.
Wow.
And I can't imagine but helping to think that I was thinking about that. I was like, it's a year from the date that I did my ankle. Hopefully I don't do it again.
Yep.
And I went into the game with that understanding, and sure enough, the only other injury that I've ever had was a year and a day later. And I can't help but think that I projected that into that game where I don't know, I stood off my right ankle a little bit harder than I should have, and my left foot took the brunt of the force. And it's just one of those things that another law of Hermeticism is that there's always a cause and effect. Miracles and luck and happen chance and all these things are just ways of explaining laws not understood.
Yep.
There is no such thing as luck. There's no such thing as miracles. There's no such thing as magic. It's just you don't understand. Like if a magician showed you a card trick and then they showed you how to do it, you'd be like, oh, there's no magic in that. I know how to do it now.
Yep.
Once you uncover the veil that there is always a cause and an associative effect of that cause, like your internal world being the exact representation of your external world, you start to see it for what it actually is. And you're like, oh, okay, I was actually the one imposing that on myself. So if I don't impose that on myself anymore, I won't get that external reality. So now I don't even think about injuries. I don't like watching those fucking videos where people break limbs.
Shit.
I don't like watching like the Mikey Musumeci video came up and
I couldn't believe, like, why are you doing this? Like, yes, it's for a world title, but at the end of the day, if you're a prize fighter, you are now out for a year. You've got no income for a year. What are you going to do?
It's very self-deprecating, and I don't enjoy it whatsoever. Just tap, man. What the fuck's your problem?
Yeah.
Unless you're getting paid $1 million, just tap.
Well, that's right.
Just tap.
Yeah.
So what the fuck's the point? Like I get the guys in the NFL and all that sort of stuff. They're getting like $20, $30 million a year. That might be worth it because you can actually set yourself up from that pretty well. But I don't know if one championship has that kind of capital. I really don't think they do. And then even in the end, like, is your knee ever going to be the same again?
Yeah,
are you ever going to be able to produce off that knee again? Are you going to be the same fighter again mentally? Like that guy's tough as shit, but almost to a fault. Like it's anyway. Yeah. But I can't imagine him not having a conversation in his head where he thought, well, I'm just going to cop any injury that comes my way.
Yeah.
He goes, this guy's a substantially better grappler than me, and I'm just going to cop the injury. And I can't imagine that wasn't the reality, the cause for that effect.
Yeah. Yeah, unbelievable. Okay, I'm a little bit curious because you mentioned you're into nerdy things. You mentioned Star Wars, right?
Fuck yeah.
And so we, obviously Yoda is obviously what I hear in my head when we talk about do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah, yeah.
In high school, like what subjects were you good at? What were the things, aside from Star Wars, what else were you into? Like,
I've always been fairly intellectually capable.
Yep.
But I had fucking zero interest in school.
Yeah.
Like almost zero interest. Biology for a brief stint did actually capture my interest. Chemistry for a little bit as well. I took both of those subjects. I did obviously PE. Actually, my best subject was sport science, strength conditioning. We actually had because I went to a sports high school.
Yep.
They did little bits and pieces on anatomy. We got to go train in the gym and put together the theory and the practical. And that's I fucking excelled at that subject. Came first in the year. It wasn't even close.
Yep.
And that's how I started getting into the gym, started lifting weights and those sorts of things. But yeah, I've always been very intellectually capable, but I just didn't apply myself to those subjects at school because I didn't see a personal interest in it. And that's obviously representative in a lot of people thinking that they are stupid just because how it relates to academia.
Yep.
Depending on the conspiratorial elements of what you believe, academia is a fucking control mechanism, and I don't do well with authority. So that explains exactly why I lost my license a bunch of times and had fights with parents and teachers and stuff like that. And in high school, I kind of mellowed out a little bit where I realized it was just a fucking 5-year grind that I had to get through. And I ended up promising my mum that I would finish year 12, and so that's what I did because I always hold my word. If you been paying attention, that's a self-hypnotic thing that I always say, and it goes into the actions. But anyway, yeah, I didn't really like high school that much. It was a really weird. Me and my mate Zach talk about it all the time. It was really weird because in the sports high school they come from all different areas. So we had people from Chatswood, we had people from Springwood, we had people from Rouse Hill where I was, and they're all different factions of groups, and we didn't all grow up together. We didn't all go to the same shopping centres, didn't all go to the same parties, and it's very different from a regular high school where all the locals congregate and they kind of grew up together and they have that fealty.
Yep.
We never actually had that, and it was only kind of the sports that we did that was keeping us together.
Yep.
And then obviously the associated things with that is like some people that play rugby league are dickheads and some people aren't. So I had people in the team that I did like and people in the team that I didn't like. So it was a really weird hodgepodge melting pot of all different things. And it was extremely strange, but I didn't pay attention a lot. I used to be one of those people who would just fuck off out of class and not show up. As soon as I got my red P's, that was my education finished.
Did you, so like, from what I gather now, you obviously do a bit of reading now, right? Were you always into reading though?
No.
Yeah.
I had never read a book cover to cover until I turned 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So-
now I don't really read, to be honest.
Oh, so you intake via listening or?
Audiobooks.
Yep.
Yeah, audiobooks. I drive a lot. I drive from Seven Hills to Penrith every day, twice a day.
Yep.
So yeah, I've got a lot of time driving, and I prefer to fill that in with that rather than listening to fucking rap music about shooting people.
Yep.
Just a personal preference.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I've always been more of a auditory learner anyway. I adapt things extremely well that are visual, that are auditory, and that are kinesthetic. I don't really retain a lot of information from reading per se.
Yep.
But again, that's what I go to in my course. Like if you learn how you learn, you can stop wasting a lot of time and you can double down on the things that you are very, very good at.
Yep.
So for me specifically, if I was to watch an instructional versus if I was to perform the moves that I saw, it'd be a completely different reality where if I'm trying to take notes on something, it doesn't really work that well for me. But if I'm replaying it in my head and then I perform it in class, that works very well for me. And it's not that one way is right or one way is wrong. It's that you have to figure out what works for you specifically. Yeah. And just because it works really well for somebody doesn't mean it will work really well for you. And that's something that they don't teach you in the education system.
Yeah.
It's something that they don't.
Like cookie cutter.
Yeah, exactly
It's
right.
a cookie cutter approach. Everybody needs to do rote learning. We're going to teach you from the whiteboard. We don't really tailor. You might have individual needs. Maybe you don't read as well. Maybe you don't do this as well. You're not good with math, but we don't care about that.
And with 500 students, like you can't tailor the approach. And like there's different things like Steiner schools and stuff like that, and they do a really good job of that. But that's obviously extremely expensive, and reserved for those people that can afford that sort of schooling for their kids. But yeah, I don't blame the schooling system or anything. I understand what it is, and I just had no interest, so I left it where it was.
Yep. No, fair. Okay, so when you came to the end of your high school career, did you have any idea what you wanted to do after?
Zero.
Zero.
No fucking idea. I thought I was going to be a fucking NRL player. I thought sport was going to be the way it still is, which is fucking hilarious. But yeah, I was only focused on footy, to be completely honest. I wasn't focused on career or job or anything like that.
Yep.
I've had, I've had like 15 different jobs.
Okay.
Been fired from every single one of them.
So talk us through. So what have you tried?
So I've been a barista. I've been a bartender. I've been a security guard. I've been a timber floor layer. I worked at Masters. I worked at a nutrition shop. I worked at a protein supplement place. I've done personal training. I did front desk at the gym. What else have I done? I've done a lot of shit. And I've been fired from almost every job I've had. I was a barista a few times.
Yep.
Yeah, it's actually how I got the deal to go to Canberra. I was making the manager of the coach's coffee, and he goes, "What the fuck? What is this?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Why are you the biggest barista I've ever seen in my entire life?" It doesn't make sense because they're usually like hipster guys or they're small little people. And
with a top knot.
Yeah, with a top knot. I actually had one back then.
There you go.
And he goes to me, "Yeah, it doesn't fucking make sense. Why do you look like that?" And it was really like abrasive conversation, but I speak that language, so I took it for what it was. And I go, I actually play rugby league for the under-20s for South Sydney, just down the road where I was in at Redfern. And he goes, "Man, Ricky Stewart would love you." And I was like, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Yeah, he loves big white dudes." And I was like, "Oh, okay." He goes, "You got a highlights package?" I was like, "Actually, yeah, I do." He goes, "Send it to me." So he gave me his number, sent it to him. And then 5-6 weeks later, I was down on my way to Canberra to go play in the NRL.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a cool story.
Yeah, that's a very good story. It's amazing how some of these opportunities, it's like they appear.
Again, you present themselves in your mind and they find you. It's not up to you how it happens. It's up to you that it does happen. And I was fucking hell-bent on making the NRL.
Yep. Yeah, it's the old saying, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess, was it then difficult when you decide to give NRL up and league up to really work out, okay, did you feel lost? Because you mentioned that you slowly started falling out of love with the sport.
Yeah, I think it was a gradated thing where I really didn't take it to heart too much because I'd already decided well before the actuality.
Okay.
Again, I saw it in my head and then I actually acted it out sometime later. I kind of lost that childhood wonderment of the game, so it wasn't really difficult. And then for a good period there, I think it was 2 years before I picked up anything else. I was kind of just happy doing the whole personal training thing, getting jacked as fuck and strong, and I thinking about doing powerlifting and stuff like that, and then it kind of bored me to no end. It's 3 lifts repeated 3 times, and then you add up the total. It's fucking boring. One of my mates, Jared, he does powerlifting now, and I call him a pussy because he can't choke anyone out. I said, "Yeah, your sport's fun. You lift cylindrical objects in a fucking straight line." And he goes, "Yeah, you wrestle with men with no clothes on." I was like, "We wear some clothes."
Yeah.
And it's weird. Why is there so much fucking homophobia in against jiu-jitsu? In jiu-jitsu, it's fine, but against jiu-jitsu, like, "Oh, you're gay. You wrestle with other men." Like, shut up.
Yeah,
like,
who cares?
Like, I could make sure that you're unconscious within 30 seconds, and then I could do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So stupid. It's so ridiculous. But yeah, I entertained the idea that powerlifting was going to be a thing. I entertained the idea of going back to rugby league, which I did for 2 games, and then COVID number 2 ruined that season. And I wasn't in the right frame of mind to go back, to be completely honest, because I was thinking about what if I get injured and I can't train jiu-jitsu anymore.
Okay, so you already started jiu-jitsu at that point?
Yeah, this was not last year before. So June, July, year before last. So I was probably about a year in, maybe. I was training at Sydney West.
Yep.
But yeah, it was one of those things where they offered me really good money and I was like, "Oh, I'll think about it." Yep. And then I ended up doing it, and then just for fucking shits and giggles. But yeah, I wasn't in the right mindset. So to answer your question, yeah, powerlifting was probably going to be the one thing that I did, and then jiu-jitsu found me, and here we are.
Okay. And then I guess, let's change gears a little bit, because I'm always curious about this. In a lot of, like, say, even in league, right? There's always a big thing about toxicity of the culture. And all of this sort of stuff, the partying. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of the devil's dandruff, etc.
Oh, yeah.
So
the Bolivian marching powder.
Yeah, like, let's talk about that, because I think it's interesting for people to sort of realise that, hey, yeah, there is that part of the culture. You know, it's a choice whether you want to partake in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, you know, from your perspective, like, did you get sort of, you know, pulled into that sort of lifestyle? For
Oh, fuck yeah. I didn't get pulled into it. I was fucking running the show. I was the marching band of that race. I won't go into too much detail, but in another life, I was a terrible, terrible advocate for that.
Yeah.
I'd go out every weekend playing like under 20s. I'd go out on the Saturday night and play on the Sunday. And
Yep.
I just didn't really give a fuck, to be completely honest. And it's what happens when you just decide that that's going to be part of the culture and all that sort of stuff. And eventually, serendipitously, I got to the end of the career and said, actually, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm 7 years sober from alcohol in May this year. And that came about from a drink driving incident where I didn't crash, didn't hurt anyone, hurt myself, got arrested, put in a fishbowl, and spent 6 hours in the holding bay, which was really fucking fun. I definitely recommend it.
So hang on. So what's the holding bay?
It's a glass box. So it's a perspex box that they sit you in the police station, and it's just wall, bench, wall, and door.
Yep. Basically,
and you have to sit there and repent your sins and think about how you're going to break the news to all of the people in your life that you can't drive anymore.
Yeah.
Fucking terrible. I was on the way to the city, and I got pulled over like just near Penny Hills Road, doing like 130, and I was suspended and drunk.
Oh, wow.
I was making some good decisions when I was 19.
Yeah.
I was making some really good decisions. And nothing that I hold any animosity towards whatsoever, because it's made me the person that I am today. And
Yep.
every time I say to people I'm going to be sober 7 years, they're like, "Oh fuck, man, congratulations. Like, that's really impressive." And I said, "Not really. It's just it's the reactionary domino effect of one decision, and realizing that, again, all things are happening all at once in one time, and all of the parallel universes are happening. So right now, the reason why I'm saying I'm the best Josh Saunders is because there's a parallel universe where I didn't stop drinking.
Yeah.
There's a parallel universe where I didn't stop driving, where I ended up in prison, where I ended up in all these sorts of things. And I was a bee's dick away from going to jail for driving.
Yeah.
I was being a fucking retard.
Yeah.
And that would have changed everything, because now there's no more job opportunities. There's all these little bits and pieces that you would have to deal with.
Hard to travel.
Having that be a reality. Well, there's no going to America for ADCC because you have a fucking criminal history that you went to prison. So it's interesting to look back on timelines and how they've shifted and the decisions that you make. And really, in actuality, I've always been a person that has been able to set my mind to something and almost like with militaristic discipline be able to attain that. And
so when you quit drinking, did you do any programs, or it was just like, nah, I'm done?
I said, I'm finished. I said, I'm never fucking being in this position ever again.
Yep.
In my entire life. I will never live a day like this ever again.
Yep.
And I just made that decision. I made that commitment. And then I said, fuck this. Because really, when you do a cost-benefit analysis of drinking or cigarettes or vaping or fucking anything, you just go, all right, what is this giving me and what is this taking away? And at that point in time, the taking away list was substantially larger than most people's lists. And it was a very, very easy decision for me to just say, no, I'm good. I'm fucking done.
Yep. And when you've done that, from your friends' perspective, were they something like, who's this guy? Like,
I lost a fuckload of friends.
Yep.
But they're all losers. They are. It's funny to say that, but they are all fucking losers. They're not doing what I want to do with my life. They are not attaining high-level goals. They do not project high-level performance. And people will think that this is... I take this however you want, but I do not accept losers around me. I don't accept negativity around me. I don't accept things that are not pushing me towards where I want to go.
Yep.
Like the lunch I just had with a mate, we only talked about how he can productize his business. That's all I'm interested in. I'm interested in making more money. I'm interested in getting better at jiu-jitsu. I'm interested in progressing all of my relationships with the people that I care about. And everything else can get fucked. Everything else. I'm only here for one. I'm only here once. And I'm going to fucking squeeze the lemon for everything it has.
Yep.
That does not include getting drunk with your mates. It doesn't include fucking smoking cigarettes. It doesn't include fucking going to a 9-to-5 job that you fucking hate.
Yeah.
It doesn't include those things. And for me personally, this is not for everybody. Everybody, you can choose to live the way that you like, the way that you live, and whatever you want. If some fucking big guy calls you a loser on a podcast, take it with a grain of salt, because that's what I perceive the choices that people make and the behaviors that people do. I don't see people as losers. I see them as committing to being a loser based on the performance that they are giving themselves in the habits and all the things that they do, that means that you can change, because you can change your habits, you can change your thoughts, you can change your actions, you can change your behaviors and your characteristics. Most people don't realize that, and this is why I sort of don't go along the lines of that trauma being an encapsulating thing, is because you get to a stage in your life where you realize, oh, I'm the fucking author, not the reader. I can actually change who I am as a person. And I always talk about it like this. I give a really good analogy. If for some reason you were to get a promotion and they would send you to the Philippines for some instance. How old are you now?
38.
You're 38. You've lived your entire life as Johnny Apps, 38. Everybody knows who you are, your characteristics, your traits, your beliefs, all these sorts of things, especially like close friends, family. If you got a promotion and you had to go live in Germany or the Philippines or something like that, you could reinvent yourself. Why the fuck can't you do it here? It is difficult to do here because of all of the reminders and the receipts of the people around you and the environment around you. And, you know, if you earn $100,000 a year in the Philippines, you're a fucking millionaire. You earn $100,000 a year here, you're getting there. Like you're getting by, right? So there's a different level of the environment and how you would see yourself. But if you can manipulate your own personality based on the situation and the environment and the location of where you are, you can do it anywhere because it's a fucking conscious choice.
Absolutely.
So if you feel like a bit of a loser, guess whose fault that is? It's not everybody else's fault. It's not everybody around you. If you feel like a winner, guess whose fault that is? It's your conscious intention and effort to say, I am this fucking person. And if you're not that person,
what are you doing about it?
Start saying it. Seriously, start saying it. I came into this sport a fucking retard with an athletic background. I had no idea what I was doing. And look, TikTok will have you believe that I'm just a fucking steroided out freak that is just bigger and stronger than everybody. But people that do roll with me understand there's a high level of technical proficiency. And it's not up to them to decide what rank I am, which is fucking hilarious. But along the lines, you decide. And I decided that I wasn't going to be the big dude that just fucking hurts all his training partners and doesn't learn any technique. And obviously, very well heeded by the best coach in the country. He said, look, you're going to sit on your ass for the next 6 months and learn a fucking guard because you don't own one. And all of these environmental factors. But I decided that at the start. I said, I don't want to be the big orc that just fucking smashes everybody. I want to be the person who can do it technically. I want to adopt certain characteristics, even in terms of like leadership qualities inside the gym. I want to be a leader for people. I'm a leader in my own business, in the stuff that I do there. I wanted to be a leader on the rugby league field, the person who could like fire the team up when it was necessary. And I think there's a certain amount of people talk about like what their purpose and stuff is, and I don't really commit too much thought to this, but I think you should be lighting the candles for the people behind you more often than you are turning them out. And I think if you can excel to a ridiculous degree that most people don't even fucking conceive of in their own reality or believe that is possible, you can start to flick some switches in some people's heads and go, fuck, I saw this guy when he started and he was like nothing special. And now look where he is, just after conscious intention, dedicated effort, and just being fucking like savagely addicted to making that thing a reality. And that's honestly why I do what I do, is because I want to light the lamps for all the kids coming up in the next generation, or the people around me, or even my housemate, my housemate that lives with me. He came into living with me in some less than fortunate circumstances. I'd just gone through like a 5-year breakup, and he was going through a bit of trouble with his housemates, and the way that I've seen him change in his mindset and how he approaches things just by living with me, he's like now thinking about business ideas and now thinking about all these bits and pieces, because it's just what we consciously talk about. And I can't help but think that that's the exact thing that happens on a daily basis on like social media. I get the messages. I know that it happens on social media, but it's one of the reasons that I want to achieve ridiculous, crazy things, is to prove to those people around me, like, hey, fuckface, you can do the same thing. It's just you that is stopping you.
But you got to put the work in.
Like
that's the thing. Like people only, they look at the highlight reel and they go, oh, I'd like to get to that. But you know, how many years was the highlight reel in making, or how much time invested to actually get to that point? You know, I went through a very similar thing. You know, because I've changed. I'm not in the automotive industry at the present moment. You know, but I was at the top of the game there, and then now, you know, I've had to sort of recreate myself from that perspective. You know, and like I did start the podcast while I was still in automotive. The purpose of the podcast has never really changed. You know, when I started, it was because I had a mate that committed suicide, and you know, I was looking at my kids growing up, and I realized that, hey, I don't really know much about, you know, my own family history, and you know, at the time I was 35, and I was like, I never cared really until this point that suddenly I did, and I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? well, this is what I was going to start. And so I started it originally just, so I could obviously talk to people and get some learning from talking to people and understanding their stories. And at the same time, working through my own thoughts and structuring my own thoughts around the lessons that I've learned. And then it became, okay, well, it sort of grew into this thing where, I'm really enjoying the conversations, and like I can start to see patterns in how people are getting certain things in life based on what they focus on, and you start to, you draw these sort of inferences based on what the person's story is, and then what was the outcome, you know? And at the same time, why is it a long form, podcast format, is because, unfortunately, to get to where you are today, you've gone through ups and downs, you've gone through hoops and loops and whatever else that may have happened along the way. It's not just suddenly, hey, here's Josh Saunders, here's this brown belt, won 80cc trials, blah, 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 blah. You didn't just suddenly get there. There's a whole process of how you got to being this person here today. And, it's funny because, there are people that live in this world of regret and they go, oh, I wish this didn't happen, I wish that didn't happen. At the end of the day, you would not be the person you are today without those things happening. So sometimes, I've had people ask me, oh, if you could change anything in your past, what would you change? And I said, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
The only thing is I wish I learnt some of the lessons a bit faster, so I'd speed up the timeline, So then that way I can, really actualize and get involved in the things that I'm doing. And then, it's weird for me because sometimes I get people that will say, oh, you're Johnny Apps. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's I don't really...
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think about it.
Strange.
Right? Because I just think about, I'm here in this conversation. I want to have a great conversation with you. I come in with an open mind that we can talk about. And I already sort of knew that some of the things that you've been talking about in your podcast and some of the things that I love talking about when I'm mentoring or teaching people in the workplace and things like that, they absolutely correlate, right? And it's funny because there's so many ways to get to a destination. Right?
An infinite number of ways.
Yeah. But why do some people just choose to not even get started on the journey, right? There's a great saying, and it's not my saying. I think it's a Confucius saying that Naval Ravikant said on a Joe Rogan podcast.
Naval's great.
Yeah, which is, a man has two lives.
Yeah.
Yeah? He starts the second one when he realizes he's only got one.
Yeah.
So let's also change gears a little bit because I am very curious about this from your perspective. Do you believe there's a God or a creator or something like that? Where do you stand with all that?
I'm not religious, but God exists.
Yep.
I don't subscribe to the ideology, the ideological beliefs. But my concept of the way that the world is constructed is that, it's kind of weird because I've kind of made up my own faction as it goes. Hopefully, the government's listening.
Start a religion.
HBU can be a religion and
tax exemption.
Won't have to pay tax. That'd be great. I joked about that with my group in my course of the community guys, and I said, we're in a cult now. I hope you guys know that. And they're like, fuck yeah, HBU cult. That was great. And they're like, is TRT going to be supplied? I'm like, abso-fucking-lutely. It's in the drinking water. Don't you worry about that. But yeah, so I'm of the personal belief that you are your own creator as much as God was, but God is in each and every single one of us. So basically the idea that I attribute to God, or it's not a man on a cloud, it's not any of this fucking rubbish crap that I don't subscribe to. Sorry. It's not the thing that I like to think that it is. If it's what you think it is, that's great. Or if it's what the listeners think that it is, great. I am of the belief that it is consciousness. In the Bible isn't a historical reference. The Bible is an allegory of a lot of subsects of different stories. In example, water to wine is the alchemical process of the mind turning thoughts into actions, and most people don't see it as that. There's a lot of other different factions of the Bible that are allegorical rather than historical in nature. The parting of the seas is the removal of your self-doubts and all those sorts of things. It's like what you see as a representation of that thing. And then, so I see God as the creative force of energy, and it is in each and every single one of us, meaning that we are creating our own future or our own past or our own present, mind you, as we see fit. As the allegory says, so God created the planets. He said, let there be light. There is light. That is in each and every single one of us. So if you say, let there be light, there will be light. If you say, I'm going to be successful, I will be successful. If you say you're going to be a failure, you will be a failure. So that's kind of my understanding on how I have formed my belief structure. I don't go to church. I don't practice. I was actually thinking about converting potentially to a religion. But honestly, I don't really see it as a massive benefit to me apart from being part of a group. But I already feel like I belong, so I don't need that.
Yep.
To be completely honest,
that's a weird thought that you need. Just the way that you said that, where it's like, you know, you thought about converting to a religion. Like, was there something that initially piqued that interest to go and say, maybe I need to explore this? And I guess the second part of that question is then, how did you come to this idea in terms of your worldview and in terms of the concept of God? Like, did something happen that then you go, okay, this is how I can see this perception of what God is come into my life? Or I guess to give you some thinking time, I can tell you. So I'm in a very similar space to you. I believe there is a God. What is the name of God? You know, is it Jesus? Is it Allah? I can't tell you. Right? How I got there was very different though. So for me, it was I took a drug called mescaline. From cactuses.
I've done a fuckload of mushroom trips, so I'm well across this.
Okay, so there might be some correlation in terms of how you.
Oh, absolutely.
So one of the things that was really interesting when I first did this, and it was like only a couple of years ago, and when I did it, I had my kids already there, and so I took this mescaline. And my wife said, you know, if you meet God, you know, tell him I said hi, right? Because she knew that I was like going on this trip, right? And I didn't go as a tourist. Like I didn't just go to just, you know, get high.
Yeah, you went to find out some shit.
Yeah, I'd written down questions that I wanted to ask.
Yep.
Had specific purpose.
Intentions
of why I was going through this process.
Yeah.
So, I've taken this thing and I've gone and lay in the study and I thought, I'll listen to some peyote music, you know, where it's just like, and the drumming and all that sort of stuff. And then, it was, what happened was I went on this experience where you imagine, and I apologize if, you know, people have heard this story before, but Josh wouldn't have heard me tell this story before, but, you know, if you imagine a lake and a very still lake, and then, you know, you touch, a finger touches the middle of that lake, suddenly you get all these ripples. Yeah. Except, you know, when you think about the idea of infinity, like there's no edges to the lake. So it was like, it started with that. It was like, and it was like, and then I was off.
Yeah.
Like that's how it started for me. And, you know, from a physical, in terms of the physical world, like I was having spasms, right? And I looked it up after and there was like,
representing the ripples.
Yeah. The spasms were in time with the ripples, right? And it would just be like, and they get faster and faster and faster. And the spasms were also like a heartbeat. So to be like, boom, there's life. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. And you're living this life. And, you know, it felt like I lived and died like 10,000 times, right? Because you live this life, the heartbeat gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and then suddenly it's gone. And it's just silent again. And it's just, the lake's flat again. And then suddenly, boom, it starts again. Boom, 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 boom. And just goes faster and faster and faster. And then you die again. And I don't know how long I was living and dying for, but it felt like a very long time.
Wow.
And I felt like I lived like 10,000 lives and male, female, animal, all these different lives, right? And then around 2:30 in the morning, and I know it was 2:30, is because like I'd woken up and I was like having this epiphany that, you know, if you were God, right, and at the end of the day, like you could wait 100 years, there'd be a different Josh Saunders, there'd be a different Johnny Yapps, like we wouldn't be on this world, right? You just wait 100 years, you got a new generation of people. You wait 1,000 years, you know, another generation of people, 10,000 years, 100,000 years, like what does it matter, right? So when you start to realize that, hey, if that's all there is to life, life is actually pretty meaningless, because it doesn't matter how great your achievements are. Like how many people can you remember from history? And generally, people only remember the really bad ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, typically.
Yeah, you remember Genghis Khan.
Yep.
You remember Adolf Hitler.
Vlad the Impaler.
Attila the Hun. Napoleon. Right? You remember all these negative people before you actually remember anybody that might be good.
Yeah.
Right? And so you know, if you think about it from that perspective, like, so from God's perspective, it doesn't really matter that, you know, I've got these humans here that live and die, and they ask all these questions about, you know, why do I live and why do I do all this and blah, 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 and they experience this life, unless that was actually the reason, or that is actually a representation of God's love. It doesn't mean anything to God, whether you live or die, you live a fantastic life or you don't. But it matters to you as the individual. that you as a person can experience the highs and lows, you know, the love, the loss,
Yeah.
you know, the suffering or successes, you know, that you can experience these things. And that was like when that sort of clicked for me, like for whatever reason, you know, people would probably say like that's like the being touched by the Holy Spirit. So to speak.
Yeah.
You know, like I was in tears, like
Yeah.
that epiphany that, hey, you know, like live life to the full.
Yeah, mine's a little bit different in terms of like God is the energetics of experiencing the human experience through each and every single one of us, because you'll never actually experience the human experience.
Yep.
And it's completely unique in and of itself, and we have that creative power to be able to create the life exactly the way that we see fit, exactly the way that He created the universe to see that we see fit. And I very much think of it on an energetic standpoint. I don't think about the white bearded man with the fucking cloth on the cloud and stuff like that. I think about the creational energy, whether you believe it's the Big Bang or whether you believe it's anything like that sort of, you know, both of those stories suit. But it's interesting you bring up the mescaline thing. I'll tell you a story that'll blow your fucking mind. So I did. I've had some mushroom journeys, and if you think I'm a fucking drug addict, so be it. But after this story, you'll probably change your mind. I was going through a bit of a rough time, February last year, and like I said, I'd broken up with a missus of 5 years, and I was kind of looking for some answers. I was like, what the fuck's going on? My life was going on a good trajectory, even though consciously looking back on it, it really wasn't. I was fucking stagnant. The only progression in my life was jiu-jitsu, and that's kind of why I dove so deep into it. So people ask me, why did you get so fucking good? It's the only thing I felt that I was validated by at the time. So why wouldn't I put all my energy and energy and intensity and effort into it? So I decided to do some mushrooms. I do a little bit similar to you. I lay down in bed, blindfolded, play some fucking Icaros from the ayahuasca shamans, and it's got like the trees in the background and stuff. And it's really calming. It's actually quite cool to listen to. Anyway, so I took it and I started seeing some stuff, and I got to a stage probably about 3/4 in, and I wanted to write some stuff down. So I got my phone out, got my notes out, and I was punching down some notes, and all of a sudden I get shot out of my body as like a third body experience, an outer body experience. And I'm looking at myself writing the notes, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, bring me back. Anyway, so this voice comes over me and he said, hey, Josh, this is your great granddad.
Wow.
And he passed away when I was 2. I only met him a couple times. He went to World War II, served in World War II, and ended up coming back. He was fortunate enough not to die, but essentially his soul died in World War II from everyone that met him. Came back, and he used to be a really jovial, fun-loving, charismatic guy, and he came back a fucking just evil person, and just from all the PTSD and things that we associate with trauma and all those sorts of things. So he ended up buying a farm in Richmond and basically fucking off to society until he died. Anyway, so he says to me, he goes, mate, I don't know how to tell you this, but I need to tell you this right now, and it's my duty to tell you this. He goes, and you need to stop taking your life so fucking seriously. I was like, wow, okay. And then the trip kind of ended straight away. Wow. And I woke up the next morning, went to do my groceries, and I rang my nan, it was my granddad's dad. And I rang my nan and I said, hey, I had this really weird dream last night. I didn't want to explain mushrooms to him. It's a fucking not worth the conversation. You shouldn't be eating plant. Nan, shut up. Anyway, so she goes, what was it about? I said, Granddad Blue is what we used to call him. I said, Granddad Blue spoke to me. And she goes, oh, really? I was like, yeah, what do you reckon? And she goes, oh, you better come speak to your grandfather about that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and quickly did my groceries, and I came back, and I went to they only live down the street from me at Seven Hills. And I went in, he goes, oh, you're speaking to my old man, have you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like pretty clued into this sort of stuff as well.
Yep.
And he said to me, he goes, what did he say? And I said, he told me to stop being so fucking serious all the time. He goes, mate, fuck. He like spat out his coffee. It was like disbelief.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I was like, you going to fucking clue me in or what? Like, I'm fucking stranded out here. And he goes, mate, the last conversation I had with him before he died, 7 days before he passed away, he died of a heart attack. I went up to his farm and I said to him, Dad, you need to stop being so fucking serious. And he goes, you're taking your life too seriously. Because he was like from PTSD, everyone was out to get him. He used to be this really jovial guy. He goes, wherever you can find your sense of humor, go and find it, because you're being too fucking serious.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, how the fuck does that come to me when I eat a plant from the ground that I bought off some fucking guy in Canberra? Tell me something that actually happened 2 years after I'd be born, with no conscious intent, no conscious awareness of that being a situation. Or
so here's something that I've been toying around with in my mind, right? And, you know, please don't take this seriously, people. Like, it's all speculation. Like, there is no theory. There's no legitimate study that's ever been done on this, right? But so being an Asian guy, my grandmother was very Buddhist and my dad's quite Buddhist. So I had a lot of Buddhist ideology passed on to me when I was growing up. And, you know, if you think about the idea of reincarnation, right? So people, you know, will probably go, oh, it's all bollocks. You know, you can't be born again or whatever the case may be.
Maybe.
Right? But technically, if you think about it like this, right? So you've got a dad and a mum. So there's 2. And they've got a dad and a mum, so there's 4. And they've got a dad and a mum, so there's 8. Right? And we've gotten to 8 and we've gone back maybe 3 generations. Right? But how many generations have there been for you to get here today? Right? Because really, like between 2023 and 0, when we say, you know, before Christ or whatever,
Yeah.
right? That's 20-something generations. You know, say it's 25 generations.
Yeah.
You know, if we say, you know, average age of living, say 70 years or something like that, it's like 25 to 26 generations. So you think about it like from that perspective, how many people's, and that's all that we would say before we get to that area before Christ. How many people's genetics are in you? And now, if you could actually just access the learning, the experiences, the life experiences that they have had in your body, you'd feel like a god almost, right? How many generations of people's learning or experiences and to impact your own outlook, you know? That would be like, you know, straight away, like forget about that movie Lucy where, you know, unlocking the power of your mind. Just think about that. Like how many people's genetics are in your body, in your DNA to form who you are today, right? And so, you know, perhaps whatever you've taken has helped you to unlock a memory that's repressed in there.
Well, how many fucking savages? Like how many people fought against saber-toothed tigers, survived? Like whether you like it or not, the human race has gone through some treacherous shit.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you actually read legitimate history, not the fucking bullshit we've been told.
Yeah, just to survive.
Just to get to this point. And there's all different types of wars. There's all different types of like the Younger Dry Ages theory, where the Ice Age and everything, the Great Flood and all those sorts of things. And there's some fucking savages that fought through that. Even like I'm obviously Caucasian and from the British side of things. So the British Empire were a bunch of fucking madmen. They were the global dominators for a long time. Somewhere after the Romans and somewhere after the Mongols. And as far as I'm concerned, you don't come from the Mongols if you're British. So one of them would have had to survive. And the Mongols were some filthy fucking people.
So I joke that I have Mongol blood in me, and the reason why is because B blood type is meant to be the
Genghis.
Come from that area. And so when you look at the statistical proportions of people with B blood type, it's the highest in those regions, and then heading in towards basically their conquests across Turkey and things
Genghis
like that.
Khan had like 500 kids, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
What a gangster.
So I always joke about that because, you know, I'm for an Asian guy, I'm quite pale. And so, you know, so and then if I let my goatee grow, it gets
real wispy.
There's red hairs in it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
interesting.
It's weird. Like
there's actually some things to say that Arabic people were redhead, green-eyed for a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm all up in fucking every conspiracy you've ever heard of. Yeah. People have been to Antarctica. People have been to Mars. Like, yeah.
Not into flat Earth though, are you?
No, that's the only one I can't get across. That's the only one I can't do full Eddie Bravo.
Yep.
Can't do full Eddie Bravo, but I'm across a lot of shit. I'm across like the way that like the banking industry is a bunch of cartels and they run the fucking world and all these sorts of things. We won't get into that.
Yeah.
So it's an episode for another day.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting that you know, these plant medicines, so to speak, or things that have been derived from plants can take you to these places, and so I'm sort of that belief that a lot of religion has come from, you know, drugs.
Well,
so to speak,
the burning tree in the Bible was a DMT bush.
Exactly.
Or shrub or whatever the fuck you call it.
And so for me, like because I did the same thing as you. When I woke up at 2:30 and I had this epiphany, I just started writing down all these things in my notes.
Yeah, that's why they call it a download.
Right. I did the download, and then the next morning, you know, I gave my wife my phone because she wanted to read about my experience.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Oh, that's a Bible verse. That's a Bible." Like for me, I'd never read the Bible.
Yeah.
Right. And so she's a devout Catholic, so she knows some of these verses. And she goes, "That's a Bible verse. That's a Bible verse. That's a Bible verse." And I was like, "Oh, wow." Which then, you know, and so that's part of how I've come to this idea that there is, you know, a God.
Yeah.
And so to me, the important thing is not so much what is his name or, you know, what is the ritual that you
What
have.
faction?
Yeah, it's more about, well, if there is a God, what do you want your relationship with him to look like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you only ever talking to him when you're in a time of need? That, hey, oh, shit's gone bad. Please, God, can you please help me? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Or is it more like, you know, I treat it more like almost like a gratitude practice from that perspective where, you know, I can have a conversation every day. I'm driving the car and I go, okay, look, hey, God, I'm about to have this conversation. You know, thanks for giving me this opportunity that I can live this amazing life,
Mm-hmm.
that I can do the things that I love,
Mm-hmm.
you know, spend time with the people that I love and have these fantastic conversations and be able to share them with other people.
Mm.
You know, like I'm grateful that I've been given a platform. You know, yes, I've created it,
Mm-hmm.
but I've also, you know, been given this platform
Yeah.
to be able to share some of these ideas and some of these things. And look, for some people, they go, oh, you know, Johnny, you're full of shit. So be it. You don't have to listen, right? It doesn't bother me.
Send me the address.
Right. So let's get back on topic. All right. So I want to talk about your jiu-jitsu journey
Mm-hmm.
because so it started from that garage, rolling with your mates and having them say, hey, you're going to be really, really good at this.
Yeah.
So where did you first go and train before you ended up at SWMA?
Yeah. Gaylor Brothers in Borkham Hills, which now is no longer run by the coach. He's actually moved up to Brisbane to go live and teach up there because he wanted to move up to Queensland.
Yep.
So, good on him. But yeah, I started training there. Started training about 3 days a week. Contrary to popular belief, one of which was in the gi.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did used to train in the gi. I was the number one ranked Abu Dhabi circuit white belt. Like the most points.
Yep.
I think I competed in that competition twice and I just fucking slaughtered everybody. Because funnily enough, like in the heavyweight division, there's just a bunch of fat slobs. They're just people who can't cut weight.
Yep.
And then there's like genuine heavyweights where I can't make any other division.
Mm.
And I like a freak athlete from another sport and
Yep.
very similar story to like Nicky Rod and those sorts of guys. And it's not even like we were lightweights and then we built up to being a heavyweight like
just
Gordon.
legitimate, naturally big guy.
It's like I live and breathe naturally at 108 kilos.
Yep.
I don't make 99.
Yeah.
I actually joked about ruining fucking Grayson and Nathan's day, going down to 99 and fucking them up. But I would probably have to kill myself to get there, so
Yep.
I won't do it. I like donuts too much. But anyway, so yeah, I started training about 3 days a week, and it was a typical jiu-jitsu story. Like you get in there wasn't really many people at the school. I believe there was one blue belt, and there was like 6 or 7 of us white belts, and then the coach.
Yeah.
And we started calling it the Gaylor Brothers Heavyweight Syndicate because if you've ever trained jiu-jitsu, you go into a gym and they're people your size.
Yep.
Everywhere. No one in my gym was below 85 kilos. None of them.
Yep.
And it was me and my mates who used to play rugby and they'd both joined the army. And then Ben, who was a purple belt now, who's like this big man, strong fucking carpenter with like crazy grips. And yeah, it was a really fun time. Like we went in there, we trained, the coaching was shit house, but like for now, the standard of the level of I'm at now, it was perfect for when I just started. And it was just like one technique shown that had no semblance to the next technique shown and no semblance to the next technique shown, which is unfortunately the majority of jiu-jitsu being taught at the moment. And that's why most people suck. But that's beyond the point. But yeah, it was great for the time. We rocked up, we trained hard, we fucking ate dinner after and celebrated and did all that sort of stuff. And we're like a real tight-knit crew. And I think that was probably one of the biggest reasons for the foundation of me enjoying the sport so much.
Yep.
I then ventured into doing private lessons, as most people do, with Josh Alsop. Josh Alsop's actually the reason I joined Sydney West Martial Arts. So we're doing privates with him once a week or once a fortnight. And he basically said to me, he goes, look, if you want to pursue the no-gi thing, you need to be training out at Penrith. And again, like I've said numerous times, I put my mind to something and it happens. And I said to him, I was like, okay, well, I'll go there. And I'll go do it. He goes, you're an expert as far as I'm concerned. You're actually doing what I want to be doing and you're telling me to do something. I'm going to go do it. And if I think it's for my benefit, I'll always do it. Always. So coming here, my first session, and I've told this story a couple of times. I'll tell it again because Curtis is a piece of shit. But right over there, just where that third row of chairs is from the wall, Curtis came over to me. I ended up rolling with 2 white belts when I first started because I rocked up when I was a white belt. I was wearing my other school's fucking rash guard, for fuck's sake. And I came in, I beat the shit out of 2 white belts, and not like maliciously or anything, but just I was just better.
In top position, yeah.
Anyway, so Curtis walks over and he comes over and he's like, oh, do you want to have a roll? I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like kind of set back a little bit because at my old school, there's only 6 or 7 people on the mat. So the coach would just pick who would roll with each other. I'd never actually been to a gym big enough where you'd ask people to roll. It was real weird for me.
Yep.
Anyway, I thought I was in trouble. I was like, oh, fuck, what's going on here? Anyway, I ended up passing him and boloing him and then right at the end of the round, he strangled me on the back. And like, again, he was one of the best blue belts in the country at the time, and I'm a fresh white belt. I've been training for like 6 months. Anyway, so the class kind of finishes up, go and have a shower and come out, and Luke was like, where the fuck have you been? Why the fuck have I not heard of you?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, you obviously watch the sport because you're wearing Gordon Ryan shorts. I was like, yeah, I pay attention, and I like doing the sport. He goes, how long have you been training for? I was like, 6 months. He goes, no, how long have you been training for? I was like, yeah, 6 months. I started in like July last year.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's one of the best blue belts that we have, and you pretty much made him look like a fucking white belt.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, I used to play footy, and you know, I'm decently athletic, and I'm super fucking strong, and this is it. And he goes, man, honestly, this is the next sentence out of his mouth. He goes, honestly, you train here for 12 months, you win trials. And ever since then, I just went fucking hell for leather. I was training most of the evenings at Gala Brothers and all the mornings here. So immediately I came here. I trained Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, Saturday morning every week. And then I slowly transitioned that to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday morning, Tuesday afternoon. I was still PTing at a personal training gym in Castle Hill. So the Borkham Hills gym, I could train jiu-jitsu and then go and finish off a couple of clients.
Okay.
So that was kind of how it worked.
Still
and then
there, yeah.
that kind of went down to one client, and I kind of said to him, hey man, like I'm going to pursue this thing, and we stopped training. And then I just went full-time Sydney West. After the second lockdown, I just ended up coming here every session. So now I do Monday morning and evening, Tuesday evening. Even this year we started Tuesday mornings as well, so I'm going to start doing that as well. So basically every day it's going to be twice a day, all the way through Thursday, Friday mornings, and then Saturday mornings.
Yeah, wow.
And that's kind of where we are now.
Yep. Okay. So then, you know, when you've moved out of, when you stopped the PTing side of things, like I guess, you know, people will be asking, okay, so how do you make money, right? So you've obviously got your HPU coaching business, right? So when did you start that?
Started HPU in 2018.
In 2018.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then back then, were you more focused on doing like PTing and things like that?
Yeah, just personal training. Like I've always been interested in the mindset stuff. I really always have, and I think it's one of the biggest letdowns for a lot of people is the way they think and the way they speak to themselves inside their own head.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how good you look on the outside. If you have body dysmorphia, you're still going to think you look like a piece of shit, and it's weird to the reality of everybody else looking at you, because you don't see yourself that way, because your internal conversations are always geared to that sort of thinking pattern. And that's obviously problematic because you look like a freak of nature on the outside. I'm not saying this from personal experience. I've never had body dysmorphia. Couldn't give less of a fuck what I look like as long as I can strangle cunts. I don't care.
Yeah.
And that pisses a lot of people off too, because I'm 120 kilos and shredded. But it's one of those things where I always knew that there was an intrinsic problem within the mindset of how people thought, and that was based on their reactions. So that's pretty much why I started doing the personal training thing, is that I wanted to espouse that through the easier methodology of getting people fitter and getting people stronger, and then manipulating their mindset geared towards higher performance results as we did that process at the same time, because I don't think those two are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And then, so I was doing the PT thing for a long time. I was doing in-person training, and then before the second lockdown in May of 2020, I think it was, I decided to go fully online. And I was not in a position to do so. I did not have any money saved up, and I just went, you know what, fuck, I'm going to back myself. Every single instance in my life where I've decided to back myself and go all in has always worked out for the best possible scenario.
Yeah.
Always, every single fucking time. I refuse to believe that backing yourself is a bad idea, ever. And then I actually went on an Instagram post not long ago, and I said, Plan B is for cowards. And that pissed a lot of people off. This one chick commented on it. She goes, Plan B for cowards. And then she wrote me this fucking novel about this guy that she was seeing, basically said to her that he can't drive her, and she's got like disabilities, all these excuse for external circumstances creating the way that she feels in her own personal life. And it really pissed her off. And I said, you didn't read the post at all, did you?
Yeah.
You really didn't read the post.
You're just taking that idea of Plan B and you're going, hey, what are you talking about?
And you just completely misinterpreted what I said. And it's so true. Like, Plan B is for cowards. Like, nobody who's ever achieved a fucking phenomenal thing thought, you know what, if this doesn't work out, I'll just do this. No, fuck that.
Yep.
That's taking away energy from you creating what you want.
Yeah, well, now you're now devoting some of your mental opportunity to this what if scenario of, oh, what if I did this, or what if I got that, versus actually just putting all your actions into, okay, this is where I'm at, This is where I want to be. Let's start doing the actions. If I was in that position, what would I be doing anyway?
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. Fuck the word if. Don't
Yep.
use it. It's a fucking useless word.
Yep.
It detracts from reality. It detracts from your ability to be able to create what you want to have. And I always abided by that, and that's kind of where I've gotten to a stage now. Is I coach a fair amount of people, and it's just on their mindset, how they approach things on a day-to-day basis, and then obviously supplementing that with the correct actions and the habits and the stuff that will perpetuate those actions. But it's majority mindset focused, even so much so that I changed my thing to Mindset Mastery Made Simple, because the way that I think is a way that produces a certain amount of results, and it's been obviously proven in the way that I'm starting to carve my path through jiu-jitsu, and even as setting my mind to rugby league or setting my mind to powerlifting or anything like that. There's never any doubt in anyone's mind that I can achieve great things, and that hasn't been a slow process, a fast process. It's been an arduous one. I used to not think a lot of myself, especially when I was a kid. And now it's been completely transformed. So I don't believe that anybody else is absolvent from the ability to do that for themselves. And I've seen it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I get messages and reviews from old clients who I haven't spoken to in 3 to 6 months. They go, man, fuck. Like the journey that I've been on for the small time that we were together, like completely fucking changed my outlook. I'm changed this in my life. I changed this in my life. I speak to my missus nicer. My job is better, more fulfilled, all these sorts of things. And I think even people send me messages off the stories that I post on Instagram every single day, and they go, fuck, man, I never thought about it like that. This completely manipulates the way that I see the world. And I was like, man, you always had the fucking power to do that. It was just somebody like me that had to show you that this was the way. And this goes back into the intrinsic meaning of why I do what I do, is because I don't think many people share this sort of information, and it doesn't come from a perceptually real world applicable source. It always comes from like a billionaire. It always comes from somebody so far out. And I just tell people all the time, I'm not fucking special. I'm just some cunt from Western Sydney.
You know what? That's I was actually about to bring that up as a comment, because a lot of the times people would go, oh, they use you as an excuse. When I say that, it's like, but that's because you're Josh Saunders. That's why you can do these things, right? I used to get it all the time, when I was in the dealerships. Like I'd be talking to even just like the apprentices or the mechanics, and they'd be like, oh, no, I couldn't get to your level because, that's you. Yeah. I'm like, mate, I was on the tools just like you were.
Yeah.
I was you, and now I'm me. And I can tell you all the steps that I took to get there. How you want to get there is completely up to you.
Yeah,
right?
It's both your own fault that you're in the position that you're in.
Yeah, it's they use it as an excuse to not actually do anything about their own circumstances. They go, oh, but that's that's you. I could never achieve this. But by saying that,
you're right.
You're right.
You're right.
You're right. You'll never achieve it.
Yep.
So I want to pivot a little bit, because one of the things that I think you do very well is that you're also very open about everything in your life, right? So there's two more topics that I want to.
We're talking about steroids.
Yeah, let's go
Fucking
there.
oath, let's go.
So I want to talk about steroids, and I want to talk about relationships.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So so let's talk about the steroids thing, because first of all, I think the caveat I should say is that none of this is medical advice. We're not telling you to do anything, right?
I am not a doctor.
Yeah, and so at the end of the day, people have to make their own decisions in terms of how they want to live life and what they want to choose to do.
Yep.
And the second thing that I want to say before we get heavily into this topic is that, people sometimes believe like steroids is like this magic sauce, like this silver bullet that's suddenly going to give
Let them believe it. It's magic. It's the only reason I'm good at what I do.
But fuck, if you don't do any work, like it's not going to do anything.
Or,
like I don't think if you just took steroids and sat on the couch and played Xbox, you'd get any stronger. Well, you might a little bit, but
yeah, the research is varied. But you put on a little bit of muscle mass, but you're not going to keep it as soon as you come off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess so I'm curious. What? How did you first get into it? Mm-hmm. What went through your mind to then go, okay, if I'm going to do this, this is the way I got to do it.
I'm going to answer this in the most long-winded bullshit political way of all time. No, I'm not. I decided that I was going to enhance my body to see what it was physically capable of within my athletic prime, being 25 to roughly 32. After and only after I had ever done 10 years of weightlifting training.
Okay.
So the idea was
10 years of weights first.
Yep.
And to see how far you could go with just pure weights.
That was the idea.
Yep.
The idea was I wanted to max out my natural capacity or my natural potential, which, mind you, I've changed my opinion about it doesn't actually exist, because you could always further the potential every single time. It's just you saying, oh, I've been training for 10 years now, it's time to get on the fucking happy sauce. That's not the way that it works. But anyway, so I decided that in my head, I said the prerequisite for me ever touching anything would be 10 years of weight training. And I think that's a really good moderator to see what your body does, to learn the habits, the skills and the processes needed to be able to eat correctly, to be able to train correctly, to be able to recover correctly. And the most important part of that is the psychological ability to be able to be comfortable in your own skin. Because I'm not a kid who just started weightlifting 6 months in and starts to get fucking confidence from being looked at a certain way, from being bigger and from people being, you know, starting to treat me a little bit differently. I'd already been 10 years in the game. So I'm not going to blast a fuckload of gear into my ass and now get addicted to that feeling. That's the thing that fucks most people when they start doing steroids, is that they get this certain amount of confidence. They start looking bigger. They start feeling bigger. They start feeling stronger. They're more confident. Neurochemically, testosterone is one of the best things for motivation. It makes you want to do more, makes you want to achieve more, makes you want to get better, faster, stronger, all those things. And then you're now associating that with the steroids rather than the hard work that it actually fucking takes to actualize the result of those things. That's where these 18-year-old kids that are doing fucking tren start to absolutely fall off the wagon. All of them are going to have massive complications in their life. I'm doing it from a medical point of view, where it's supervised by a doctor. I get blood tests every 12 weeks on schedule. There is never a time that I miss a blood test. I make sure that all my blood parameters are in perfect fucking order. I get consultations from a PhD in biochemistry that looks over my work, and he says to me, this supplementation is going to help with this is going to help with this liver enzyme is out, this C-reactive protein is within range, let's manipulate these targets and do those sorts of things. So I take it very, very seriously. The reason why I decided to do it, and the reason why I decided to continue to do it after the initial cycle, was because the testosterone rates have dropped 50% in the last 35 years. And that has a lot to do with the way that we are living a sedentary lifestyle, has a lot to do with the EMFs or the radio frequency waves that we have from not 5G towers, but from like Wi-Fi signals and things like that. Even this would be emitting a certain amount of radiation. Even your phone would be emitting a certain amount of radiation. There's glyphosate in the food. There's phytochemicals in the food, and all these, exactly, there's microplastics. There's all these things, even things like polyester underwear is a endocrine disruptor. Most people don't know that, but as soon as they stop wearing polyester underwear, they can conceive a kid.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
That's okay. I never knew that one.
Women are getting fucking destroyed on their end with the pill and all these sorts of things. There's endocrine disruptors everywhere, and most people don't realize that. And we're actually being fucking attacked for our testosterone, because fighting aged males in that age group are the most dangerous fucking people on the planet, because if we get together, there's going to be a revolution.
Yep.
How do you keep these people fucking sedated, and how do you keep them sedentary?
Yeah, you keep their test down.
You keep their testosterone down so they dye their fucking hair blue and drink soy lattes and be fucking cowards.
Well, and look, I think we're going to go into a very controversial area here. You've reeled me into it,
Reel them in.
But I was just having this conversation where it's like, I think Miss Universe is a trans woman.
Oh, fuck's sake.
Right? And it's like, okay, and guys, this is a joke, okay? Don't take this too seriously. Don't try and cancel me.
I will be serious.
But it was like, okay, so of all of these beautiful women, we let the man win.
That was the joke when Bruce Jenner, not
Right?
Caitlyn, Bruce Jenner won Woman of the Year.
Yeah, that's right. So
that was the joke. We're even better at being women than women are.
That's right.
Which is not
and
true.
the fact that women celebrate this, they're celebrating. It's almost like the wolf in sheep's clothing, to use that anecdote, right? You're celebrating the wolf that's in sheep's clothing and saying you're the best sheep ever. Meanwhile, that wolf is eating the other sheep.
It's going to fuck up all your kids.
Yeah.
Which it is doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go back to steroids.
Steer
first.
from the trannies.
Yep.
Steer clear from that one.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
I'll touch it. I'll touch that subject. I'll leave my hand in the stove.
Well, let's continue talking about the roids first.
Mm.
So, when you say, so obviously you get your blood work done and things like that. Were your levels low to begin with, or
No.
No. Okay.
No, I was in the hyper elite range already.
Lucky you.
Yeah. I'm genetically gifted. I am, but I use it to my advantage as well. My brother has the same genetics as I do, and he fucking doesn't do anything in sport. He has low level of competition drive, and he doesn't achieve anything in sports. So everybody to say that, oh, you're fucking genetically, brother. If I swap genetics with you, I'd still be as good as I am.
Yep.
you could have my genetics and you'd still be shit because you'd quit because you don't have the fucking mindset to produce the results.
Yep.
It's so much more than that. But yeah, the real reason that a majority of people, especially within jiu-jitsu and especially within the majority of fucking pro sports, where most people don't realize that 90% of people in pro sports are using something to their enhancement. Specifically with testosterone, it's one of those things is that it is always at a stable level. If you inject it exogenously rather than produce it endogenously, it is not subject to your immune system. It's not subject to your stress tolerance. It's not subject to your intake of food. It's not subject to any of those things. So even something as simple as not sleeping well or drinking alcohol can nosedive your testosterone through the floor. If you're then going to train the day after, which I do not fucking recommend, you might not recover until 2 to 3 days later for your endogenous production.
Yep.
If I'm putting it into my leg, it's always there ready to go. So from a perspective of me trying to get the most work done at the highest quality possible with the least amount of drawbacks or injury potential or anything like that, it's a pretty fucking easy choice. And then people go into the morality conversation where they go, oh, don't you think it's morally wrong that you're choosing to enhance yourself and other people don't? Well, in jiu-jitsu, it's fair game. It's within the rule set to be able to do whatever you want. So basically it's a you fucking problem if you don't do it, and it's not a me problem if I do it.
Yeah.
And even go back to the simple fact of the matter is that, again, it's not magic. It's not the only thing that makes somebody good. There are plenty of natural athletes like Jeremy Skinner that do fucking just fine without it.
Yep.
It's a personal decision. It's a longevity decision. It's something that I'm committing to for life. It's not something that I'll ever come off, because it's much less healthy to go up and down and up and down.
Yep.
Which is why you see the majority of the jiu-jitsu people starting to have complications, because they're not educated on the subject. They do not do it correctly. They blast and cruise. They use orals. They use all these dumb things. And this is the separating factor of what an intelligent approach is versus a fucking roided up gearhead approach. It's stupid. Certain compounds are going to limit your life.
Yep.
Testosterone is not one of those things. Testosterone derivatives, 19-NORs and DHT derivatives, they're going to do some fucking damage.
Yep.
And they're not necessarily safe for long-term use.
Yep.
There are some certain things like nandrolone and masteron that you can use for long-term and not have consequential effects, but it's always going to be down. There are going to be side effects. How can you mitigate them to the best degree possible? There's going to be side effects for caffeine. If you have 2 shots of caffeine in the morning, you'll be fine. If you have 12, you're going to be in fucking trouble. You're going to start hearing fucking sounds and hearing sights and seeing noises.
Yep.
It's going to be a fucking problem.
Yep.
And so it comes down to not only how you're taking the drug, but it also comes down to the dose dependency, and it also comes down to your responsibility to make sure that all your health markers are in check. And a lot of people ask me the question like, aren't you worried about long-term health effects? And I answer, because I'm a smart ass, I answer in saying that I'd rather burn bright and burn short than I would burn dimly and burn long in terms of life. And that's just how I live. That's how I project, and that's how I like to see my life. I would rather die at 65, having had an illustrious career and doing everything that I wanted, driving fucking Lamborghinis and doing all that sort of stuff, than I would living to 85, having a fucking life that I wasn't pleased with. It's a very simple exchange.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you do it correctly, you have it supervised by a doctor and experts that are far smarter than you in the area, and it's completely safe to do. It only comes down to the morality subject, where people think that they're fucking higher morals because they don't take a substance. And it's like, well, okay, you can go through your entire life without ever touching caffeine. Do you get a fucking gold star at the end to say that you're a weapon? No, you don't. If it's part of the sport, if it's part of the achievement of the sport, and it's fucking completely fair and legal to do, go for it.
Yeah.
I was clean in rugby league. I never took anything in rugby league because it was against the rules of the sport. If it's
Well,
not...
even in league, right? Like there was that whole peptide saga. Right?
Oh, shit, yeah.
You know, and so
Dr.
people,
Dank.
Yeah, right? Like, so, you know, all that happens is within the scope of any rules, like people are always going to try and maximize the rule set to their advantage. So, you know, you start having to produce this list of saying, okay, these are the performance enhancing drugs which are banned. But then people will then go, okay, well, what about this?
What about the ones you don't know about? What about the ones the Soviets have developed for many, many years and they don't even have tests yet?
It's like the whole SARMs and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. What about the drugs that they're fucking producing every single day? It's like the whole cat and mouse thing with the drug industry, where they're trying to smuggle drugs in different, new and creative ways. And the guys and the police and all that sort of stuff, they're only ever catching up because they're always catching their tail because they're constantly producing new things. It's the same thing. There is always going to be an advantage. And a secondary point I want to touch on is that elite level athletes and professional athletes live and die and breathe by the sport. So much so there was a study done by a big medicine journal. They asked 500 Olympic level athletes if they could take a pill and win a gold medal, but they would die in 5 years, would you do it? 52% said yes. That's a fucking unbelievable number.
Yep.
I personally would not do that.
Mm.
It's a fucking crazy number, but you don't understand. If you're not an elite level athlete, you're not going to do what it takes. You're going to do what you think it takes. Most people think that weight loss, they think that it takes a couple of sessions a week for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
No, it fucking doesn't. If you want to maintain those results, it's a lifelong choice and a dedication of effort, and making sure that you watch what you eat, making sure that you're consciously aware of the actions that you produce every single day, and that you create a character and a habit around it.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because it's like a lot of people think that, oh, if I achieve this goal, that's going to change my life. You
Fuck
know?
no.
And what they realize, and because I went through this, right? Like when I was in the automotive industry, I was like, my goal was to be a dealer principal of a car dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And originally, you know, when I was 28, I was like, oh yeah, I've got 4 years to go and get to this goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then through some, you know, a bit of luck, when opportunity meets preparation, you know, a particular dealer principal that was employed at one of the businesses in the group that I was working at decided to resign. And that gave me an opportunity to step into that role. So here I was at 28 becoming a dealer principal. I was like, shit, I got here 4 years before I had anticipated. I hadn't put any thoughts into what is the next step from here.
Yeah.
And my world very quickly became very, very hollow because it was like, oh, you know, I've achieved this goal, and now what? Right? Because I wasn't driven. I was driven purely by the goal. I wasn't really driven by, you know, what can I continuously do.
Outcome focused.
Yeah, I was outcome focused. So now I achieve this outcome, and then what? So what happens now, right? And so then it becomes about, okay, I need to prove a point. It's about me, which actually then creates a poor leadership style, because you're trying to fulfill your ego to go, you deserve this role.
It's
you
not
deserve
about you.
this. Yeah, where it's not. When you get into those roles, the right way to actually think about it is now, okay, you're in this leadership capacity. It's about your people.
You're a person manager.
You're managing people. You're now responsible for the careers of all of these people. Their successes, their failures are your successes and your failures.
There's a caveat to that. Even if you're in a self-owned business, it's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
people management.
Yeah,
It's just
in any business.
It's just to the sum of one.
Yep. In any business, and that's what I think a lot of people fail to understand. It's like if you go and work in whatever industry, and you can work in like a dead end job. Let's say it's a dead end job. You're just doing it just to make a few bucks when you're 14 or whatever, right? So you're operating at this employee level. All your responsibilities to do is the tasks that you're given, right? The outlined daily tasks. That's all you focus on, right? But then if you choose to turn that into a career, well, you can very quickly move from being an employee into being a manager by getting very good at your tasks, so that people then go, okay, this person has ability. We're going to give them more responsibility, and that's how you sort of progress from that perspective. The sad thing is that if just because you're the best employee doesn't mean that you're the best manager.
No.
Right? So you're very good at doing the daily tasks, and sometimes that becomes a deficit, because you move into this management role, and it's like you've got people that you're supposed to be upskilling, but instead of upskilling them, you go, look, get out of my fucking way, let me do it because I do it better than you.
Yeah.
Right? And so then all that happens is that now you're compensating for the lack of training that you've given them, which is your fault in the first place. So then
Creates a bigger hole in the problem.
It creates a bigger hole in the problem. And so, like, I would always explain this. So, you know, to any new employee that I onboard or do a mentorship session with, it's like, okay, you need to understand there are 3 hats in this business. In any business, you know, you've got the owner/leader, you've got the manager, and you've got the employee. You know, people, they want to be the best employee because they want to become the manager, right? But then the problem is that nobody gives you the handbook to go and say, this is what makes you a good manager, right? And so then this is where you've got to actually take some responsibility for your own career and do some of your own learning to understand who you are as a person, and how do you now manage other people, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is your management style? And so, you know, and then I go further to break it down and go, okay, typically most leadership styles are formed out of 3 things. It's fear, ego, and control, right? And they sound like very negative things to begin with. But, you know, the manager that's fearful is the guy that says, look, I don't want to show you anything because I'm scared you're going to take my position, right? Or you're going to get better than me at my job, right?
Good. That's your job.
That is your job, right? The guy that's got the ego is like, oh, it's all about me. And that was me. I was a little bit of this guy where it's like, oh, I've got to prove a point that, you know, I deserve this role. I deserve this opportunity because it's all me. And then the guy that's controlling or girl that's controlling is the micromanager. The one that turns around and says, hey, I need you to do this. And then 2 seconds later goes, oh, I need you to do this as well, and this and that. And they're so prescriptive.
They do it my way.
Yeah. They're so prescriptive that they don't give you any rope to go and learn how to do it for yourself, right? And so, you know, I was a little bit of the ego guy, a little bit of the control guy, and I only learnt how to channel that later on to turn them into positive things where it's like, okay, for my ego, you know, for this business to be successful, it's not about my success. It's now about my employees' success and drawing my ego from how successful my employees are And that's what then I believe took me to the next level as a manager, you know, and then understanding with the control side of things, rather than being a micromanager, empowering your people to actually make some decisions. And what happens over time, you know, whether it's like, you know, with your coaching business at the present moment, you're wearing those all three hats yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the actual coaching, you're doing the marketing, you're doing your daily, your monthly tasks, and you're also looking out for the future of the business and trying to grow the business, right? But over time, what happens is if you do a great job, you might need to employ more employees who then do the coaching from the day-to-day perspective, and now you're focusing purely on being the owner and leader and the manager, you know, developing their training and helping them get to the next level so that they can obviously then provide the training and do the employee daily tasks that you need for your business to run. And then it might get to the point where it's like, okay, I don't need to do the management, I'm just going to outsource it to somebody else, right? And so then you're focusing purely on, okay, what are the big picture goals? What's happening in a year's time? What's happening in 3 years' time? What's happening in 5 years' time, right? It does not matter whatever business that you're in, you know, all businesses have these 3 layers. It just depends on how big the business is, right? And how much separation there can be between those layers. And so it's something that, you know, I thought about a lot because, you know, when you sort of end up in these positions, you really have to think about how do you avoid making poor decisions, more so than making the right decisions, because at the end of the day, you know, not making a decision is just making no decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's switch gears a bit. Relationships, right? So, and I'm always curious about this as well because, you know, you're a high performing guy, or you're a guy that's chasing excellence. How does that then feed into your relationships with other people, with friends, with family, with loved ones? And the reason why I say that is because we've already touched on the idea that, hey, you know, the day that you decided, hey, I'm not drinking anymore, you lost a lot of friends, right? How does that go for you in terms of like rebuilding your network around you and the people that support you? And I guess, you know, to use the old adage of you're the average of the five people that, you know, that you surround yourself with.
Yeah. For me specifically, you're either on the bus or you can fuck off.
Yep.
Like that's, I am a fucking very extremely directed person. I know exactly what I want and I know exactly how I'm going to get it. And I know that it has already been done. I just have to wait for time to catch up. If you fuck with that, you're off the bus.
Yeah.
See you later. I have absolutely zero tolerance for weakness or fucking negativity or anything like that. I fucking despise it. It's gross to me. Now, everybody listening might think that that is an extreme way to look at things. Well, I'm an extreme kind of guy. I'm going for extreme kind of results.
Yep.
I need to take things to the extreme, hence the fucking steroids,
Yep.
hence the fucking training schedule. Most people think that what I do on a day-to-day basis is unfucking believable. Well, it is believable because I do it every fucking day.
Yep.
Even my housemate said this to me, that he's got some mates who do jiu-jitsu and he knows nothing about it. He's come and done one session here just out of curiosity. And they go, what's it like living with that guy? And he goes, honestly, it would bore the fuck out of you.
Yep.
And he
Because
goes,
you just do the same routine day
he
in,
goes,
day
what
out.
do you mean? He goes, he's a fucking washing machine. He just goes round and around and around and around. It's the same shit every day. Same food, same meals, same fucking things. And that's what produces excellent results. And to tell you the truth, I've attracted and cultivated a phenomenal fucking circle of high performers. An incredible circle of people that are far further ahead than me in business, of far further ahead than me in their relationships, and I take what I can from those people and they take what they can from me. And I don't think it's a bad thing thinking of it in a transactional relationship. They're thinking about me as like the warrior monk and they want everything to do with my mindset.
Yep.
I'm thinking about them and their business prowess and talking to them about how I can actualize and be better financially. And then the next person involved is talking about how we can all chill the fuck out a little bit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You need all of those bits and pieces. And I think I was talking to a good mate of mine during the week and he's kicking some really, really cool goals. And he said it's difficult for us because we are nodes of influence within our circles. We are the people that people want to hang around with to develop their circle of those 5 people that have the qualities that they want to be.
Yep.
And we're actually thinking about developing a core group. Again, another cult that I'm going to be a part of. A core group of these high-level performers that are males that are geared towards testosterone-fueled achievement and conquering and doing those sorts of things. And it speaks very heavily to me in terms of like the warrior monk attitude is you have to be capable in all things. You have to be extremely emotionally intelligent. You also have to be extremely violent. You have to be violent in chasing what you want. I don't mean violent as in punching or hurting people. I mean violent as in you are taking what you fucking deserve because you've told yourself that you deserve it. And you're not going to leave any stone unturned.
Yep.
You're going to die knowing that you gave it everything. There's a Hunter S. Thompson quote that I said in my podcast either yesterday or the day before. it. He goes, "What?" I'll paraphrase in my words. What the fuck is the point arriving in a pristine box at the end? He goes, "I want to go across the line skidding with a bang and say, wow, what a ride." That's what I want. And if friends or acquaintances or people that I have the benefit of being around don't align with those values, that's fine. But we're never going to be friends.
Yeah.
We're never going to be fucking people that hang out together. I tell people no all the time. They go, "I want to catch up with you." Too fucking bad.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an ROI for me.
Come to the mats.
Yeah, exactly right. And
Come have a roll and we can talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk and I'll sing Dixie while I beat the shit out of you. And then in terms of like loving relationships, I'm extremely fortunate to have found my missus, currently Talia. She's extremely supportive of me. She knows exactly what I need when I need it. She knows what to say when to say it.
Yep.
And it's not like I'm fucking saying that she has to say the right things, but she goes, "You're going to be the fucking best. You're going to be a world champion. You're going to be fucking super successful.
Yep.
And I'm going to help you along the way."
So out of curiosity, from a personality perspective, is she similar to you, or would you say that she? So, and the reason, and I'll give you an example, right? So, you know, when they do like those left brain, right brain, front, rear sort of studies. So, my wife and I, we're opposites in terms of how our brains operate. So, I'm like obviously a type A kind of personality, and I also have this creative side. So, I'm sort of like diagonal brain, but she's diagonal the opposite way. She's analytical. She's all that sort of stuff, a bit more reserved. And so, I guess, you know, from that in terms of how your relationship works, and I think part of the reason why my relationship with my wife, I feel like, is a great relationship is because we're not trying to do the same things, we're trying to complement each other.
Yep.
You know, but some people, like, they get, you know, in some relationships it works because they're both very type A and they're both driven and trying to get their goals and trying to do all that sort of stuff. So I'm just curious, you know, in terms of your relationship dynamic, how would you describe it?
We match each other very well. She's definitely we're the traditional male-female roles.
Yep.
She knows that she's the supporting character. She knows that she's going to be the mother. I've already told her she's going to retire at 35, whether she likes it or not.
Yep.
And I'm going to be the one that protects and provides and does all those sorts of things, and she's going to be the one that raises the kids. And as am I. I'm going to be the leader for the children. Absolutely. There will be none of any of the things that I've disparaged about friend groups that will be within my household. Yep. Absolutely. But yeah, we work fantastically. I was in a previous relationship where the attention thing was a big problem, where it was one of those things where it's like, "Oh, you're not giving me enough attention because you train too much." And I was like, "Listen, I understand that, but I don't know anybody who can be the best in the world at what they do. The only person that I know is me, and I'm going to fucking take the opportunity with both hands. And it's not going to be a second chance." And I think that created a rift, which eventually ended up in the end of the relationship, which is fine. I was pretty fucking devastated at the time, like 5 years of effort and all that sort of thing. But now I can finally see what a relationship is meant to be like when there's no conflict on like the charge of what I'm trying to produce.
Yep.
And my Mrs. Talia, she's the fucking best. Love her to bits. Shout out. She's never going to listen to this, but I might clip this for her and tell her I talk about it to my friends. If she's fucking interested, probably not. Yeah. But she's great. She's ambitious. She owns her own lash business. She works full time and she knows exactly what she wants as well. And she's happy to support me in my endeavors and come along for the ride. And she's extremely supportive. I had been dating her for less than a month, and she said, "I just bought tickets to Vegas to come watch you fight." Yep. She goes, "I'm going to come spend 10 days with you afterwards, so we can spend some time together." And I was like, yeah, this is the one. Yep. 100%. I'll marry you immediately.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it was great. So we work extremely well together. I honestly, we don't fight. We don't have arguments. And most of that honestly comes down to traditional fucking relationship values. She understands that she's to feel safe and protected in my presence. Yep. And that I am to feel warmed and endowed by hers. Yeah. And that's extremely simple to find out. Like, I don't need to be protected by my girlfriend. No. And I also don't need to be the fucking emotional wall for her. It's one of those things that it doesn't need to happen. And I think people are getting this misconstrued. And again, to go for fucking low testosterone people, they don't have that protective quality. They don't have that nature. So the girl is always suspicious. Like, why don't I feel safe around this guy that's meant to be my partner? And it's one of those things. And I'm sure you're of an older generation. You start to see this more and more in the younger generation, where these relationships are falling apart because they don't hold to traditional male values. Yeah. They're not a provider. They're not a protector. They're not a leader. They're going, "Oh, well, the government wants me to do this, so I'll just do this." And it's like, "Oh, fuck off, man." There's no charge. There's no, and this is why I don't associate with a lot of society. And I don't really feel like I fit in a lot, which is fucking awesome.
You know, I'll tell you, part of the problem though, is that people aren't like we're sort of at this point in the world where people are self-censoring themselves. You know, I was having this conversation with another one of my friends, and I won't say who it is, just so that
Sonny Brown.
No, it wasn't Sonny Brown. But one of my
shout out to Sonny Brown.
One of my high school mates, right? And so
legend.
you know, like this whole Dom Perrottet is getting cancelled at the moment because of his Nazi outfit that he wore at his 21st birthday party, something like that. All that sort of shit, right?
Yeah.
And so this mate of mine at his, or at one of, I think it was actually my wife's 21st birthday, he dressed up as an Aboriginal.
Yeah.
Right? In the blackface and everything. He's an Asian guy.
Yeah.
Right? And like,
no harm, no foul.
It wasn't, it's not intended to be anything harmful, but it was funny because in our, in their friend group, from the high school friend group, some of them were saying, oh, you're going to get cancelled now, you know, because you done this. And I messaged him privately and I was just like, oh, so what do you actually really think about all this? And he goes, oh, I hate all this shit because it's like a lot of the movies that I love, all these things that aren't really politically correct, you know, people want to throw them out, like say Tropic Thunder. Now, I don't care what people say. Tropic Thunder, fucking fantastic movie.
Great movie.
Right? And I don't think even black people would be upset with Robert Downey Jr. at how he portrayed it.
Not.
He portrayed it so fucking well.
Absolutely
right?
not.
So, but yeah, it was interesting though because he was like, oh, you know, I wouldn't obviously like the parents of my daughter's friends to know that this was something that I did in the past. And I'm like, why? Why do you care? It's like, oh, I wouldn't want them to think that I'm this or that. And I was like, okay, but if they can't actually sit down and have a conversation with you about it, how would they know that you're not this or that?
Exactly.
Right? They want to sort of draw an inference from basically this idea that you did this. Like, who cares?
Completely characterizing some person of one act that they have contributed to their entire life of acts is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. So people don't say these things, right? And so, you know, I was having a conversation with another mate of mine and we were talking about, you know, like I'm very open about what happened with my mum in terms of mental health and things like that because I think it's important. There's a lot of, especially in Asian culture, they have this idea of face, you know, like they call it, I would say it's pride, right? Like if you translate it. But the idea of face is that you don't want to show that there's something wrong, right? And so unless it's something physical, like you've broken an arm or you've got a physical ailment, you don't really...
masculinized culture.
Yeah, you don't talk about these things that could potentially be under the surface that are wrong.
Yeah.
But if you don't talk about it, like I often think about, you know, my mate that committed suicide and I go, if only I knew him, perhaps I could have said something different, right? And I think like that, but then at the same time I also realize that he's made specific choices for his life and that's what he's got to go and do, right? But the point is that if that means that I now shy away from having these hard conversations and delving into these difficult topics that may potentially save another person from doing that, right? From knowing that there are voices out there that could say that.
Yeah.
Hey, look, so be it. That's great.
Yeah.
Right? Was never the intention. I'd rather just have the great conversations and learn from myself. But,
you
know, while I'm learning, everybody come and join.
I mean, that's a precipice for the reason why I do a lot of things I do. If you don't like the fact that I said that your behaviors make you a fucking loser, then I hope that sits in your mind for the rest of the week. I really do. I really do, because I have a extremely optimistic outlook of the human race, and I think anybody is capable of fucking incredible things if only you were to believe that it was true. I've seen it so many times to believe the opposite.
Yep.
I've seen it 1,000 times. I've had conversations with people where they completely change their lives. I've had conversations with people where they completely change their lives for the worse. I've seen it so many times, but it's this ephemeral change. Like the winter does not last forever, neither does the summer, neither does the sun, neither does the rain, neither does the sadness, neither does the happiness. There is always fucking change. The world is in perpetual motion and it will never fucking stop, which means you don't have to be the person that you wake up as on Monday, as you are on Tuesday.
Yep.
You don't have to live subject to the ideals that people tell you are you are the way you are.
Yep.
People might tell me I'm a cunt on the internet. I don't give a fuck. Maybe I am.
Doesn't matter.
Maybe I'm not.
What does it matter?
I don't give a fuck. The way that I see me is fucking way more important than the way that you see me.
Yeah.
I could not care less. Your actions do not have any result on the way that I live my life, and it's not going to change my decision-making process. It's not going to change the effects of my decision-making process, and I'm going to live the way that I see fit.
Yeah. They've just got to ask themselves their own question. Are you actually really, really happy? Because if you're not, what are you doing about it?
Fuck, Johnny. Even happiness, man. Like, fuck happiness. It's the shittest metric ever because, again, it's a perpetual... It's an ephemeral thing.
Yeah.
You can't base your life on the success of something that is ephemeral. It is gone 1 minute and then it is within you the next.
Yeah.
You can't dictate your. I'm not saying you do this. You can't dictate your success of your life whether you feel a feeling or not, because it only lasts for a maximum of 20 seconds, and you're back to fucking la la land where you're now judging yourself on the fact that you don't feel a feeling that can't fucking stay there anyway. There has to be a certain level of fulfillment. Is like, what are you creating for the world? What are you delivering for the world? What are you changing in people, the way that they see themselves, think about themselves, or the way that they act within a certain light? And what are you doing as a leader in your own personal circle? Are you fucking standing up for what you think is right? Or are you fucking falling behind like the rest of the people that decide to be sheep and all those sorts of things? I don't really like that conversation because it depends on personal values. But people listening get what I say is like, what are you building and what is going to last longer than you, and why is it important? And that can fucking guide the majority of your decisions to where you have an extremely fulfilled life. If I die tomorrow, I'd be extremely satisfied with the way I've lived. Yep. Extremely. Because I fucking do what I say and I say what I do. And I know I'm a fucking good person. I know I put energy into the world that is positive and that gives people an ability to look at somebody doing something incredibly difficult and go, fuck, I might be able to change something about my life as well. Yep. I think the more that I can do that, my whole goal when I was 16 and I first started getting into the gym, I got into Ziz. Rest in peace, Ziz. He was one of the main proponents for me getting into the gym, as was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he, the way that he inspired a generation of people to go and lift weights and become healthier was fucking unbelievable. And I looked at that as a 16-year-old. I said, I will die having motivated or changed 1 million lives. And that was, shout out to little Jack Martin, having a fucking gay old time over there. He's a great kid. He's a fucking absolutely adorable. Anyway, that's Luke's family if you guys are watching. But yeah, I said I would die having lived motivating or changing 1 million people's lives. And I'm almost pretty fucking close. I'm only 20. I turned 26 in March. Yep. I've had my content viewed more than fucking 25 million times on TikTok.
There you go.
Whether that's made an impact or not, I would be ambitious to say that it has not. But that keeps growing every single day, and I keep doing the same actions every single day. I keep producing the same things, and I think over a long enough time horizon, who knows? Maybe it starts to slow down, and maybe I hit that when I'm 60. I couldn't give less of a fuck. Yep. I've decided what I wanted. I'm going to go after, and it's going to change for the better. And 1 million people will have better lives knowing that I existed.
Yep. I think that's let's pull up stumps there. I think that's plenty for people to try and chew on.
Oh man, go back through this and fucking take the nuggets, because there's been plenty.
Yeah, absolutely. But I love it. You know, I love the way that you approach things. I love the way that your mindset in terms of how you approach life. You know, because at the end of the day, yeah, that's why we're here. We're here to live life to the full. Yeah. If you're not grabbing it by the balls and fucking singing yeehaw, let's fucking go.
Even if your balls are small because you take tests.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching.
Absolute pleasure.
All right.